innovation. We'll be hearing from marketing leaders from TextNow, Waldorf, Astoria, Maldives, Carhartt, and Del Taco. Last week, we produced our largest virtual tentpole event, our 4-day Brand Innovators Trend Watch Summit, which was a huge success. Thank you to all our amazing community of brand marketers. If you missed it, be sure to check out the on-demand footage at our website or on our YouTube channel. Before we begin today's event, I'd love to share a quick recap of our first tentpole of 2021, which took place in lieu of our events at CES.
Welcome to the official 2021 kickoff Brand Innovators event. I'm sorry to negate all of that calming energy. We have an amazing program to kick off this year.
Alicia, it's so good to see you.
Meenakshi, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm really excited to chat with Julie.
It's my first event with Brand Innovators this year.
We have 3 days, over 30 main stage speakers, 13 different private roundtable discussions, everything from data-driven advertising to purpose-driven marketing, future of retail, entertainment and streaming, everything that you, the marketer, needs to know to have a successful 2021.
The brand purpose obviously is critical as brand stewards, as communicators, as strategic marketers. We need to understand what brand we're trying to build. As we entered COVID, we knew like this has the potential to be a catalyst and a galvanizing force for our entire operation.
People's psychology about the pandemic obviously changed week by week and month by month, where we had to really focus on safety and sanitation, contactless delivery, contactless carryout early on.
The entire pandemic, we've been working on just making sure that our content is speaking to the times, is sensitive to what people is going through, but is also continuing to evolve.
I'm sure that everyone here has seen babies and families and partners passing behind the Zoom or the Teams calls, and I think the ability to want to keep human and to allow for the integration of personal and professional lives is something that helps a lot and put people at ease.
We are shopping brands that are consistent with our values. We are looking for brands that have a point of view in terms of society and what is happening currently and current events, that are also close and working with our communities, and importantly, of course, that they are sustainable.
I think that's so important for brands right now to really make sure that they're not just sticking to whatever media plan or social plan they might have had before, they think they're supposed to do, or waiting for things to get back to normal. There's not a normal, there's not a thing to get back to. We're really in a place where we can only go forward and really progress.
Every single touch that we have with a consumer is an experience and is a representation of the core of who we are as a brand. And so all of those need to weave together. It's not a new concept. It has been around for years, but now consumers have raised the bar of the expectation of every single experience. The number of experiences in our brand ecosystem has exploded astronomically.
Think about your customers and try to see if you can map their unmet needs that kind of point you in the right direction for the kinds of things that you should be experimenting with. Obviously, testing and iterating kind of new things in a way that makes sense and that give you the confidence to really launch new things at scale.
On my mind, it's just B2C. Like we are on the same side, like their B is my B. What is more important, the structure, the processes, or the culture? I've seen places that have no structure, no process, but it works because the people are a certain type of people and it fits well with what they're trying to accomplish.
What is that story that any of us are telling, and how do we make sure that it's actually satisfying a need? Think about search, think about social advocacy, think about all of these other channels. Like, you need to be relevant and you need to be needed.
Well, the worst thing you can be in our business, as you know better than I, is irrelevant. We certainly are out of that, and now we're starting to see embracement. People have a feeling towards Gillette that's positive. And when you are able to combine love and respect, I think you're able to secure business for a long time.
We focus our PR only around March for Women's History Month and November for Women's Entrepreneurship Month. The closer you keep whatever area of purpose you explore and you dedicate yourself to what your brand stands for, the easier it is.
Well, that always gets us excited and a great way to kick off our live casts. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to welcome our first speakers of the day. Please welcome Ken Wilner, the Chief Growth Officer at TextNow, and his moderator, Joe Hall, the co-founder and COO at Spaceback.
All right.
How are you?
How are you doing today?
Good. Glad to have you here. Thanks for kicking us off today for our Marketing Innovation Day. Looks like Ken's just getting his video launched. There we go.
How's that?
Right.
Testing.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'll hand it over to you guys and pop back in at the end.
All right. Thanks so much. Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. Thanks for being here for this first session with us at Brand Innovators, driving growth through digital channels. We got a great session with Ken Wilner, Chief Growth Officer of TextNow. I'm going to let Ken introduce himself in just a second before we dive into questions. But first, my name is Joe Hall. I'm the co-founder of Spaceback. Spaceback is a creative technology platform that makes it easy for brands and marketers to distribute their social media posts across the open web and traditional banner placements. Check us out at spaceback.com. All right, now that that's out of the way, Ken, how are you doing today? Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Doing great. Thanks, Joe. So Ken Wilner, Chief Growth Officer at TextNow. Growth really takes on two dimensions, sort of a lofty title for both growth in terms of user growth and really driving marketing to that effect, and growth in terms of revenue growth, particularly around building our ad revenue base.
Awesome. That's super helpful. For those of us who are less familiar with TextNow, why don't you kind of just give us the kind of 1-2 punch for that?
Yeah, TextNow is a really interesting company. So we're an 11-year-old company that was founded around the idea of making mobile phone service affordable for all. And the concept was really around that, 11 years ago, and even today, arguably, basic phone service, calling and texting, is not widely affordable for everybody. And so the mission of the company is to provide both primary and secondary phone service to people for low or no cost, both through calling and texting.
Awesome. That's super interesting. I was not familiar personally until recently, so thanks for that intro. How long have you been with the company?
Yeah, so I just joined about 9 months ago, which was a really interesting time. And what attracted me to the company was this purpose-driven, mission behind the brand. And it's quite interesting to join a company in the middle of a pandemic, particularly a company that's helping underserved communities and people who need free phone service in a time where that's pretty prevalent. So it's been a really interesting and inspiring ride so far.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen some. I'm sure the first 8-9 months have been interesting. I'm sure as things are opening up, that's going to be even more interesting as things change. What are some of the marketing channels that you've seen some of the most growth to date over the last year?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. We're a subscription service, and one of the things we're learning is as you to attract new users from new pools of users, I should say, we really need to explore more upper funnel type of channels. So we have been, over the past year or so, experimenting with television, both streaming and both connected TV and linear. And we've been doing a bunch of work also on new social channels. About 3 or 4 months ago, we started working with TikTok and working with influencers specifically on TikTok, which has been really a revelation. We're starting to see some very strong growth from those channels, and we believe we're pulling in groups of users that we wouldn't normally get through performance channels.
That's super interesting. I'm gonna double click and press pause on that TikTok for just a second if we can dive in.
Yeah.
You mentioned influencers real quickly. Have you done any more traditional type ads on TikTok, or have you only worked with influencers to date?
Yeah, so it's actually a combination of both. So what's interesting about the TikTok platform, and we have been working closely with the team over there, is that their view, and it seems to be holding up, is that the most effective way to use the platform is to do ads through influencers. So try to create some more organic type of content that is, really a content-driven ad, and it's recorded and produced by the influencers and then distributed across not just their channels, but amplified across TikTok. And we found that to be pretty effective. We've done some pretty unique things and are starting to build a library really of this content. One of the other areas that we're examining is being a content creator ourselves. So we're looking for ways, as we expand beyond our core audience, we're looking for ways to attract new users in sort of non-traditional channels. So even producing content and distributing that, across social and potentially other channels. So one example of that is we learned through our first party data that an emerging use case for our product is dating. So people want a free second phone number to be able to use it for privacy purposes and safety purposes when they're dating. So we're examining creating a dating show, creating a short snippet-based social dating show, and working with a company in LA called the Underground Group to help us do that. So we're experimenting with a lot of different ways to use those channels in the most native and organic way that we can.
And that makes a lot of sense. A lot of experimentation, as things change and testing the waters. Is in relation to TikTok, I found some brands, are hesitant of how to engage in the conversation. Influencers is a natural way to do that. Was there any hesitation in TikTok and how it would impact your brand? Any consideration on that front? Because I know a lot of people sometimes are hesitant how to get involved with TikTok.
Yeah, well, and even beyond TikTok, we're on Snap and Instagram and all the core social channels. I think you have to let that go. My view is, the brand has to be owned by the users at the end of the day. It has to be owned by your customers. It's, we're making a suggestion really, but it's really how they use it and how they embrace it and how they own it. And, particularly in social, I think you have to let that evolve and emerge. So we were okay with that. I mean, of course, we provide guidelines and we talk about how the product, the benefits of the product and the value proposition and so forth. But really, we let the influencers in this case sort of own their sort of creative expression around that brand.
Awesome. I think that's super helpful. As people are considering TikTok, like I said, I think that's one that people are maybe less familiar with and more brands are diving into. So that's good information. If you have any more thoughts on that as we go, please share, because that's one that I'm eagerly interested in.
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to share if time allows some of the content. It's pretty fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, let's definitely make sure we do that then. I'm sure we'll have time. So talk about the customer experience a little bit. Obviously, part of growth is kind of getting people in. How do you handle customer experience? When they're on the platform, how do you see that fitting into the growth story?
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, at the end of the day, our service is delivered through an app, right? So we're really, that touch point is everything, right? This is the entry into the brand and into the business. So we want to make sure that we're satisfying the user at every stage of that journey. And we definitely have work to do there. We're trying to create new ways to learn more about the user needs, both from onboarding, finding ways to communicate and convey our message to that user across the journey through things like push messaging and email and so forth. But really making sure that we're always satisfying their needs at every stage of that journey. So customer experience is important. We make sure we take great pains to make sure that we're raising our scores in the app stores, and that we're making sure that customers are satisfied with the experience they get. At the end of the day, we're providing free phone service. So even though the user is not paying for it financially, they are paying for it with their time and attention. And we monetize based on that time and attention. So we want to make sure that the value exchange is satisfactory.
Yeah, that's it. The customer experience is always important, right? And there's lots of touch points, like you said. And you guys have an app, so that's like a great way to like engage with them and make sure that that's a good experience. So, what are some telco trends maybe that are larger than you all that you're noticing or you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, so we keep an eye on the MVNO market. That's of direct relevance to us because we are a quasi MVNO. Our service runs for free both on Wi-Fi and also on cellular. So we have a relationship with Sprint that is now migrating to T-Mobile, of course, so that a user can get access to phone service, even for just basic, communication services, looking for a job, healthcare, whatever it may be, social services. A user can get access to those services both on Wi-Fi and on cellular for free. And that's really important because, we have about 10 million monthly active users today, and about half of them use us as their primary phone service. So we are, for all intents and purposes, their carrier. So we think, we look at the telco market, and we look at, in particular, the MVNO space to see what new trends are happening. How companies are marketing themselves, what the value proposition is to users, to make sure we're always relevant and staying ahead of that.
What do you think? Are you noticing anything in 2021 that's different than 2020, or anything that you're excited about, or channels you're interested in testing or leaning more into, or leaning out of a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really we're cautiously optimistic, like everybody, that the second half of this year is going to be, we're going to be coming out of the pandemic, hopefully in a strong economic way, at least in a healthy way for everybody. So on a macro level, just thinking about it in a generalized way. On a more micro level, we want to continue to understand how we can attract a broader user base to our service. There's two primary audiences that we think about. One is this, primary phone service, and then there's a number of secondary use cases. Another example is people who use it as part of the gig economy or as a side hustle. They want to have a second phone number for that. So as we go into the second half of the year, we're starting to think about how can we attract people who might not naturally need us as primary phone service? How can we attract them to this secondary, as a secondary phone number for various use cases? And that will involve broader marketing channels. That will involve attracting people who are not lower in the funnel.
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, I wasn't as familiar with you all. I'm definitely going to check you out. Awareness is obviously hugely important to drive them down the funnel. And you mentioned some TV that you all are doing. Is that something that is a little bit more recent, or tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, as we started doing TV, I want to say middle of last year. We have seen really good results. We're particularly around organic growth. So linear TV in particular the results of that manifest through organic growth. So driving users more organically. They may come in through other channels, but they're aware of it through TV. So we've seen some pretty strong results there. We will likely amplify that going into the second half of next year. And then, of course, connected TV, because it's so measurable, you have an IP address and you can understand exactly who's coming into your platform through connected TV. That's a real strong performer for us as well. And, one of the areas that we're understanding now is creative. understanding sort of the different creative messages, because you have to have a portfolio of various creative messages that you can run on. Even on TV, you have to slice and dice this in ways that we didn't think about years ago. You have to be really refined about what is the message for a particular network in a particular day part, targeting a specific audience that might be different than, other places you're running. So we're really trying to learn and get more sophisticated about rotations and mixes in terms of creative as well.
It sounds like a lot of data you're going to need then, and to parse and understand.
Yeah, it really is. We're very data hungry. So we're trying to understand both through our first party data, what our users are doing and why. And then through third party data, what are some influences that they might have, and even getting data from our media partners, which is critically important to understand, what that journey was. Did somebody, how do we attribute a particular user or install, in our case, to a particular TV spot in a particular network? So we're learning, but it's been a positive experience so far, and we think there's a lot of growth opportunity there.
As far as creative, you mentioned obviously that's important, testing messaging. Do you handle that in-house? Do you have an agency? How do you develop that creative?
Yeah, we use, so both is the answer. We do have an in-house creative team, but we also use external resources, agencies and production companies and so forth. So we have a combination of both. And our view is, whatever it takes to get the best, work, we're all about that.
How do you think about organic versus paid channels? Do you kind of use sort of paid to try to drive organic, or are you primarily focused on paid? How do you evaluate that?
Yeah, we definitely use, I learned this term recently, so I'll throw it out there. There's a K factor, which is essentially the multiplier effect that you get on organic from paid channels. And so we're always thinking about using our paid channels, yes, and our performance channels in particular, yes, to drive direct response and direct growth, but we're always looking for some multiplier effect on organic. And we're looking for channels that can help drive that multiplier effect, because ultimately, I think where you want to get to as a subscription service is you want to be able to lower your cost of acquisition over time, because you're driving in non-paid users to lower your average customer acquisition cost. And so we really think about how do we leverage paid to be able to do that, and what channels are more effective at doing that.
Awesome, that makes a ton of sense. Sounds like you're having some success with that in TikTok. I've seen TikTok, their engagement numbers are really high, plus the potential to strike lightning in the bottle if you get the algorithm and the right content that gets shared. I want to definitely, if anyone has questions, please submit them. Ken, why don't we, while people are thinking of some questions, why don't we share some of that TikTok content? I definitely would love to see that.
Okay, sure.
I'm a sort of a newer adopter to TikTok. I try not to go down that rabbit hole too often, but it's a little bit addictive, so I'm going to confess.
Let's see if everybody see my screen. Let's get this wider.
Yes, I can see that.
Hey man, can I talk to you? See, I had the door closed while you walking through. I know, my bad, but I matched with this girl on the app and she asked for my number. Tell me what you think. She could be crazy, she could be psycho, she could amaze me. Download text now, I know it saved me. So get another number for your safety.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so there's just, it's fun. That, by the way, that influencer's name is Biddle. His handle is Biddle, and he's a rapper, and as you can tell, and so we're trying to find ways that are organic to the platform, to the medium, and let them have fun with it, and really get our brand out there in new and interesting ways.
That's awesome. Before that, I love that. I love the authenticity of that, and I feel like it works for your brand like crazy. So I'm excited to hear how that goes. Let's see. One quick question before we jump over to audience questions. You mentioned the kind of like dating TV show. Is that going to be like are you going to distribute that through social? What's kind of the distribution mechanism for that?
Yeah, so we're going to put out some content called Going in 60 Seconds, which is Going stands for Give Out Your Number, which is a dating concept that we've coined. And it'll run on social channels primarily, and depending on how well it's received, and we think it'll be well received. But depending on how well it's received, we may look at other ways to amplify it.
Awesome. We'll keep an eye out for that. I'm sure everyone will.
Yeah.
Here's an audience question. When it comes to communicating with your consumers, how do you think about brand purpose? I know you mentioned that's an important thing that attracted you to this role, and how does that impact your approach to marketing?
Yeah, it's really important. That's a great question. So, indeed, if you come to the homepage of our website today, the first thing you see is we believe communication should be for everyone. And we do. We live that motto. We know that we take seriously the fact that we're providing a basic fundamental service for some people, a good portion of our audience. And so we try not to violate that in marketing. I wouldn't say that I can't point to any areas where it may have changed channels that we choose, but definitely the messaging stays consistent around this idea of whether you need phone service as a basic tool to live your life, or you need phone service for secondary uses. We want to be able to provide that to you, and we want to do it in a way that where there's trust, and you're going to get the service that you expect from us.
I can speak personally over the last year. I'm sure a lot of people can relate, like human connection, messaging. You're in that space. That's so important. And I think we realize in some ways how important that is over the last year.
Yeah.
Another question. How do you see your audience demographic expanding to be more inclusive as the industry grows and evolves?
Yeah, we actually feel really good about that. So based on our first party data, we have based on what we can infer, at least from our first party data, we have a pretty diverse audience today. So we believe that roughly 50% of our audience is non-white. We tend to skew younger. And so we're proud of that. We want to be able to serve everybody, frankly. And as we grow, we want to retain that audience, of course, but we also want to broaden and build on that audience. We take diversity and inclusion as a company really important, really seriously, I should say. And we're always trying to improve both from as an employer, frankly, as a company ourselves internally, and also we want to project that externally. If you look at our communications, a lot of our communication involves people of color, and we want to continue to project that as we grow, because that is a primary audience for us.
I think that's awesome. Obviously, it's important to be purposeful in that, right? It sounds like you guys are, and so that's awesome to hear.
Really
we've touched a little bit about some of this in the conversation to date, but a question came in: what can heritage brands learn from newer digital-first brands, which I would consider you all, when it comes to authentically marketing to Gen Z? We talked about that a little bit, but brands that didn't grow up in that space, I find it's a little bit harder for them to make that jump.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you have to experiment. You have to be willing to, I said this a bit earlier, but I think you have to be willing to cede a bit of control as you think about, expanding into channels where the Gen Z audience is. You have to give up a bit of a control, and you have to experiment. You have to see what works, and have a culture of optimization. Constantly trying things focusing on what works and improving it and so forth. So I think I used to work for some heritage brands. So I have a little bit of that experience of, kind of wanting to sort of sort of have a one-dimensional conversation with your users. And I think it has to be multi-dimensional. You have to think about it in the ways that the users want to access and own the brand. You have to be able to be relevant with them in that way.
You mentioned that earlier is really, the brand is in the mind of the consumers, or you said something to that effect really early on. And so just to lean into that, as well as I know sometimes at Space Back, we talk about, enabling brands to move at the speed of culture. Culture is changing. The world is changing more quickly than it was. And I think traditionally you had more time to plan things and sort of drive that narrative. And now there's a little bit of you can't always drive the narrative. You have to go where the conversation's happening.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Let's see here. Okay, another question from the audience. How do you approach emerging media channels, and how do they factor into your overall strategy? Again, a lot of these are around the same themes. Yeah. So feel free to address that, and then I'll kind of piggyback on that. As you're developing content for, let's say, TikTok and some of these social channels, do you see the ability to give legs to those in, let's say, TV or connected TV? Are you putting some of that content in other places, or do you see those as completely separate kind of arenas?
Yeah, no, not. I'll take the second question first. So not at all. I totally see those as complementary, and I do think that, we use this dating show as an example. If it takes off in social channels and it builds a following, I could totally see that expanding into other channels. And I don't view them as exclusive. I don't view the channels as exclusive. I do think that you want to start by, as I said earlier, you want to start by creating messaging and using the tools that are organic to a platform. So using the channels that are organic, using the communication tools that are organic to a particular platform to be relevant there first. But I think there's always elements of what you create that can be amplified elsewhere. Maybe not in their entirety, but some derivative form can always be amplified elsewhere. So yeah, we're always, I think the goal is to get to reach. You want to get as much reach as you can. And if you have something that is successful in one platform, you should definitely try it in another.
I think it's really interesting when, this dating show that you've mentioned, it's just, that came from a huge consumer insight, right? It's how people are using your product. And in some ways, it feels like a little bit of a bold, it does feel like an experiment. It does feel like a bold move to take that insight, but it does seem to be like a very deep consumer insight. Was that sort of intentional? Let's find out like how people are using the product. How did that sort of come about?
Yeah, so we that came about through first party data. So exactly what you said, Joe. We wanted to understand how people were using our product, and we learned that about 8 or 10% of our users raised their hand and said they use it for dating. So that became a use case that we wanted to lean into. We've seen other use cases like folks that use it for a side hustle. So a lot of people use it for a side business. They want to have a separate phone number and voicemail and so forth to keep that separate. One of the new use cases we've seen this year that's quite interesting is teachers. So as you can imagine, with distance learning through the pandemic, teachers want to keep their personal life separate from their professional life. So they want a second phone number for that. So we've done a lot of evaluation around these use cases to understand exactly how people are using our platform. And then we'll find ways to reach those people, either directly or indirectly through those channels. And the dating's a good example of that. It also drives partnerships that we might form with companies. It drives creative messaging. It drives content creation. It drives media channels that we would use. But it does start with insights about our audience and how they're using the platform.
I like that. That's a thread from an authenticity from your users, where they are, how they're using your product, trying new channels. And letting go a little bit on areas that you can let go of from a brand standpoint.
Right.
Let's see. What about? Can you let us in on anything you're excited about from a product standpoint or a company standpoint, or tease anything out over the next year that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, we've got a lot on our roadmap from a product standpoint. We're going to do some things around video that we're excited about. We're going to continue to explore how data can play a role. We're both a buyer and a seller, so to speak. So we're both a marketer and we're trying to build our user base, and at the same time our primary revenue stream is ad sales. And so we think about leveraging data in both of those contexts to understand as much as we can about our users. But video, we think, has a lot of legs for us, and we're going to be doing some really interesting things, I think, around the video in the video space.
Well, video is definitely hot and has been hot over the past year. So I think that's and will continue to be. So that's exciting. I look forward to that as well, and probably has some added value in the dating world and potentially your upcoming TV show. So
yeah. Well, and I think it's important to try and find a unique spin on it. So of course, there's a lot of video chat out there today, but thinking about ways where we can differentiate with video is really important, and provide it for free. At the end of the day, we're a free service, and we want to make everything free. Frankly, we want to be able to offset our costs through by attracting marketing and advertising dollars so that we can offer the service for free and continue to layer value-added services on that for free.
I think I'm glad to hear you say that. I kind of actually wanted to ask about the differentiation from video. So that's cool that you mentioned it, because I think you're right. Like, how do you do it in a way that's authentic to you all, that's unique to your customers, it's based on data and how they use the product. So that's awesome. Are there any kind of, as we're sort of winding down here, any sort of leave behinds, from, I would say from this current role? I know obviously you've been in the space for a while, and maybe how things have changed, but just how, where you've seen success driving growth, and just any tips for the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's trial and error. Honestly, there's no silver bullet. It's trial and error. It's lean into what's working. Definitely don't be afraid to try new things. This old dog has tried a bunch of new tricks, and I think that's important. So keep trying stuff, and when you find a spark, when you find something that's got some energy and is starting to attract a user base, particularly today, when you mentioned this, Joe, you can hit lightning in a bottle without even knowing where it's going to come from. You step into something and it takes off. And I think you have to be, in order for that to happen, you have to be open to a lot of different ideas and try a bunch of different things.
One more thing before we get kicked off here, just because it popped in my brain. Clubhouse, that's an interesting space, probably less directly relevant for you right now, but even audio, Spotify, do you do anything in the audio space, or have you considered Clubhouse at all?
We have, and we've done a fair amount on with podcasts and on Spotify, Pandora, and so forth. So we are trying audio. We haven't quite cracked the code on that yet. So, but I think there's something there, and we're going to continue to try and see if it might work for some of our audiences.
That's awesome. I love that. I love the try and learn, Ken. I mean, some great tips today, and just your willingness to try and be where your customer is that's a huge takeaway for me, as somebody that can learn from this talk. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you both so much. That was a great note to end on, and send some inspiring words of wisdom to our audience tuning in. It's never too late to try something new and learn new industries and businesses. So thank you so much, Ken and Joe, and we hope to have you both back again soon.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks. Well, we hope you guys will stick around for our next few sessions and continue to submit any questions you might have in our chat panel and communicate with other audience members tuning in. We're really excited to introduce the next panel. We'll be hearing from Nina Alexander Hurst, Marketing Communications Consultant at Waldorf Astoria, Maldives, moderated by Chris Dieter, the Chief Communications Officer at Influential.
Thanks so much, Emily.
Yeah, glad to have you guys here, two mainstays on our Brand Innovators events. So glad to have you here, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. Hi, Nina.
Hi, I see my internet here in the Maldives seems to be not super strong right now. So you're frozen for me. Hopefully you can see me.
I can see you. You're a little pixelated, but just fine. What time is it there, first of all?
I'm very far. It's 10:40 at night. We did not change our clock, so luckily earlier than it usually is for me here, but I'm only half asleep.
Well, good. I'm glad it's not like 3 in the morning or something. That'd be a bit rough. Well, I have major FOMO. When I actually, Mark Sternberg, the founder of Brand Innovators, a few weeks ago, told me what you were doing, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is incredible. How did this come about? Especially, I mean, it's a freaking pandemic right now. You are in the Maldives. How did this happen?
So the property needed some help with marketing strategy because a few people were away for a little while, and they asked the Hilton corporate office in Singapore, who asked the Hilton corporate office in DC, who said, I know the exact right person because previously I was the senior director of brand marketing for luxury and lifestyle for Hilton. So working on Waldorf Astoria, Conrad, so I worked on this property from headquarters and I knew a lot about it, and I was able to jump in quickly and work on the strategies that they needed, the storytelling strategies from ideation to execution. So a lot of it was right time, right place. And I spent a lot of 2020, volunteering for the elections in Georgia and hosting Brand Innovators conferences and doing a lot of things that I was really passionate about, partially because I did not want to go back to full-time work. And I knew that there was some adventure out there waiting for me. And then this popped up. So, you gotta wait for what you believe is right. And the Maldives have actually been relatively, for the most part, not untouched by COVID, but the way that this country has handled COVID has been incredibly effective. Like all staff here quarantines before coming onto property, like we're fully masked. Also, like I'm in an overwater villa right now. Everyone staying here is in an overwater villa. The properties aren't that large. There's never a time where you're engaging in a lot of guests. It's not like Las Vegas where you go to the pool and it's like big crowds. So it's a pretty safe place to be during COVID. And we've actually been at near full capacity or full occupancy for quite some time. So
wow. And correct me if I'm wrong. Every individual place has their own pool, right?
If it was daylight, I would give you a tour.
Show me the tour.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So do you guys as staff really get like an extra room? Are you in like the side room, like the room that didn't get rented, or how does that work?
No, I'm lucky as a consultant that I'm in a villa right now, but there's also a staff area. So this is not normal to be living
this isn't where you live.
Villas. Yeah, I'm living a dream right now. This property is unbelievable. It's relatively new. Like some of the largest villas in the Maldives. Like the pool it's like a full-size pool. It's stunning.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually did my research yesterday, and actually now I follow it on Instagram. This is my wanderlust, absolutely. And I see the chandelier, and I was like, I actually know what that looks like from the pictures. So yeah, those villas are outstanding.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you have like the overwater, like you could like look down and see under the water. That's so amazing. Oh, how cool.
Yeah, in the bathroom, there's the bathroom. Yeah. I feel very fortunate right
Living
now.
the dream.
I know that I'm not normal. And I also love the work that I'm doing. So it's, yeah, I feel very fortunate.
I would just say it's like a 15-hour live cast and just stay.
It's yeah, the sunrise is pretty incredible. And also to have worked on the launch and the opening of this property from the corporate office, and now to actually be here and to be working on the marketing strategies is like a really unique position to be in, because I came to hospitality from e-commerce. And while there's a lot of similarities, you know, I was doing for Bobble Bar brand partnerships and customer experience and influencer marketing and all these things. And a lot of it translated over, you know, almost exactly to hospitality, a new industry, but there's the core of marketing is marketing. But then to be able to get on property experience, it was actually one of my goals in 2020. But like you're saying, it's COVID, like not the most ideal time to get on property experience. But then to be able to do it here and to see how a property is run, the operational side, you know, even marketing budgets at a property like this are, you know, with the average daily rate here can be, you know, $3,000. Like it's an ultra high net worth audience. And so to learn how a property works at a place like this is definitely a gift.
That's super cool. Well, I know you didn't get here without some sacrifices. You had to make some tough decisions. You actually wrote a fantastic piece that I read that kind of gave me a little bit of intel. Tell me about what you had to go through to get here.
Honestly, leaving my puppy back in the United States was the hardest thing. That was definitely the most challenging piece. And also I had just moved to Atlanta because I moved to Washington, D.C. for the role at Hilton. But one of my big learnings at the beginning of 2020, although I knew right away, I was in New York for 13 years and I never felt quite at home in D.C. While I absolutely loved Hilton, DC it's a very serious city. And so it was a challenging place, I think, to transition to. And I love most everywhere I go. So I was surprised by that. So I moved to Atlanta and I was just starting to set roots in Atlanta and network and meet people. And so it was sort of a breath for me to pick up and leave. But I think that these types of opportunities are once in a lifetime, and figuring out, like, does it align with goals? Like I, you know, just sat with friends and said, I want on property experience. And this is the #1 property in the entire Hilton portfolio to get on property experience. And to actually have a marketing budget in 2021 in hospitality is very unusual. And so, you know, this is a really amazing opportunity to be able to do this. And so I think that, you know, with any job, there's sacrifices on a personal level, like to come from the corporate office and to go to a property in hospitality. It's not necessarily like the straight path that one might be looking for. More often, it's actually going from property to corporate. But I wanted to round out my career. And as a storyteller and a marketer, like I know how this fits into my story, even if it's not the most obvious choice or decision for a lot of people in their career. Like there's no way I'll look back on this time and think, ooh, like maybe the title wasn't right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And, you know, I've definitely been given that advice of, ooh, do you want to, like, is this the right title? Or if I were to stay here full time, like, is it a step back? And in my mind, it's definitely not. Like, if you love what you're doing and you can tell the story of how it adds to your experience, that's what's most important. I think sometimes focusing too much on title and this like ladder that we need to climb, as opposed to like, what brings you fulfillment? What do you enjoy? What are you going to be happy doing every day? We can sort of lose sight of that. As someone who like sometimes does climb that ladder a little bit, I have to remind myself, wait a second, I'm doing what I love. Like what's more important than that?
Yeah, I can imagine, because maybe the only thing better than like working there would be just to be there all the time. But then again, that'd probably get boring. So at least you're like involved in all the things, all the decisions, and you know, you help, you know, mold this resort, which has got to be amazingly inspiring, because you must be around the world's wealthiest celebrities, wealthy people. I mean, just the the depth and breadth of the kind of people that come there, just to even, meet them and kind of see what their world is like has got to be fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. And one of the projects I'm working on is, storytelling for the property and putting a story behind the resort and a feeling that people have as they go through the property. So when they leave, it's not just, the restaurants that they ate at, because we have 11 restaurants here, which is more, awesome. More than any other resort in the Maldives, and they're incredible. And like everything here is impeccable, but we also want to leave people with a feeling beyond that. And so that's one of the projects that I'm here working on. And so, to be able to work with every team on property to bring it to life, it's like any other company, you have to get everyone on board with the idea and everyone behind the strategy for it to actually get up and running and to go smoothly. So I actually think my partnership marketing experience is probably some of the most useful experience that I have, because that's essentially what it is to get a program or a strategy up and running at a place like this or at a corporate office. It's bringing everyone along with you, making everyone feel like they're a part of it, taking everyone's feedback, making sure you're taking the most important feedback and listening, like truly listening to everyone, to bring something like this to life, and figuring out like what makes people tick so that you can work together closely with them. We're always talking about like ROI and all these things, but at the end of the day, on any of these projects that are brand building, like you have to work so closely with lots of people. And if you can't figure out how to make the people portion of it work, like you're never going to have an ROI. Like you won't even get to that point.
Yeah. Just a random aside question that came to mind. Do you see a particular contingent of the world that comes specifically to your resort, or is it so global and everybody from everywhere?
It's definitely global, but because of COVID, it's a little bit different. So right now, more Russia, Middle East, the countries that can travel, like China can't travel. Typically, there would be a lot of Chinese guests here. Europe is still coming, except for when they go into lockdown. So it sort of depends on what's going on in these other countries. And the US also, so it is global in nature, but some markets a little bit more than others.
Yeah. Are a lot of people from the US still coming, or not so much?
There are definitely people from the US. I'm actually the only American on staff.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Which I was really that's never been the case. But we definitely have people coming from the US as well. It's further. So like a little bit lesser so, but they're still coming. Especially guests.
I checked the flights. I'm trying to manifest this into reality. So it's going to be a while, but hopefully someday.
It's not, the flight wasn't so bad. The flight wasn't so bad.
It's like a full day, right?
Yeah, but when you get here, you forget. You immediately you step off the yacht and property, and like you don't care how long. It could have taken you 4 days to get here, and it won't matter. Like everyone's like, is it as amazing as you see in the photos? Yes. You don't need filters here. You the influencers use them. You don't need them. Most everything is like perfect on the iPhone.
Yeah, amazing. Well, let's get it. Let's dig into the work a bit. Like, I'd like to know, specifically what are some of your initiatives? What are you guys working on? What's exciting to you there?
So the storytelling project is a big one, and it hasn't launched yet, so I can't say exactly what it is. But the idea of it is putting a story behind the resort to then create experiences that leave guests with a memory. So like a feeling that you have on property, and similar to like when you breathe in the ocean air, you remember what that scent was, you take it home with you. Like if you breathe in that scent somewhere else, you're reminded of a vacation. I'm creating experiences like that sort of bring you back to the resort. And bring you back to this idea of like magic and the feeling that you get when you're here, because it truly is a magical feeling when you're on property. So I've been working on that. There's a restaurant that launched, so I was working on the launch for that. We have these 2 overwater villas that are standalone, only accessible by boat. And so I was working on a positioning exercise. Yeah, they are truly incredible. So working on positioning for those and influencer strategy and what content does the sales team need, because those are more typically sold by travel agents versus booking direct, and looking at a very cohesive plan for these two villas that are such unique products on this property. And then also looking at the 2021 spa strategy. And so I've been helping a lot with the higher level strategies while I'm here.
And is there a larger team that you're working with, or is it a lot of solo work? Yeah.
Both. Yeah. There's a great team here that I rely on heavily. That's, some of them have been here from before this property even opened. I work closely with the sales team. For me personally, it was important while I was here to get a better understanding of the sales side of hospitality. And so supporting the sales team has been really important to me as well, because I want to get a better understanding of how it works. And I've been able to do that by working more closely with them and asking them what they need and what I can create that's going to help support their work. So for these two overwater villas, for example, they needed better collateral brochures to sell this dream. And yes, the positioning is very important, so we know what to put in these brochures, but that's what they really need to sell it. So really like listening to the various teams on what they're needing and seeing how, based on my past experience, I can jump in and create things really quickly.
Cool. And is corporate in America, is that sort of the hub that you kind of work to? Yeah.
Yes, yes, there's also an office, corporate office in APAC. So the main headquarters is the US, which is where I was working, but there's also a corporate office in APAC that we work a little bit more closely with here. Also with time difference, it makes it much easier as well.
I can imagine. Yeah. So you told me you were previously the Senior Director of Global Brand Marketing and Partnerships, Luxury and Lifestyle. You were handling Waldorf, Conrad, Canopy. How does this experience differ from that, or what are there overlaps? Is it vastly different? Tell me about that.
It's really interesting. So I put together the partnership between Waldorf Astoria and Aston Martin,
cool.
which we activated globally. And, we did glamping at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and we were at Pebble Beach, and we did activations on property. We brought the brand to life off property. There are so many different aspects of that partnership. And then, I come in to meet with the GM on the first day, and there's one of our Aston Martins with the logo on it, like sitting on his shelf. It's like you see things like that come to life on property, or one of the main photo shoots for the brand. The imagery is all over the property, and it's like, oh my God, I remember when that was shot. Or like I worked on the brand magazines for Waldorf, for Conrad, and it was one of my favorite projects, like figuring out how to take a print magazine where the content was living and dying in print. No one was that in favor of them, and turn around to a digital first model and create content that I could then use in my email marketing, be used on social media, and also then was fueling the digital magazine website and print as well. But print being one of the ways that we're distributing that content, not the only way. And so, you get to a property, like there's the magazine. It feels really good to see all of it come to life here. And then to be able to be a part of it and understand the brand, but work on these various things. So now, okay, with Aston Martin, how can we bring Aston Martin to life on this property? Which was a little bit more difficult to do from corporate. It's obviously not like, when a property's first built and it's over water, like the first thing you think of is not, how do I put a car on that property?
Yeah. I mean, are there even cars on the island?
Opens, no. This island is, no, I bike to work.
Yeah.
No. We have a lot of golf carts and bikes, but no cars. Because
they can put one off to the side. Say when you get back to the mainland, this is what you drive.
Yeah, it's So it's, when a property's first opening, like while they want to participate in a partnership like that, it's not necessarily feasible. Like there's so many things to do when a property is opening, but now we're at the point where we can actually look at that partnership and that relationship and see what's possible that's going to really create a moment in media, but also enhance the experience here. Like the kind of guests that we're catering to have garage fulls of these, supercars. And so being able to do something with a brand like that in a way that's like authentic to the Maldives is a very, very interesting project to work on. So because I, have those relationships, I'm able to bring it here and move it forward more quickly than I perhaps would have at corporate, or than someone else would have if they didn't necessarily have that background. So there's certainly like a lot of overlap, like even, in the brochures that I'm doing, like the approach that I take to content is very much based in the email marketing that I've done for the brand. Like I have a better sense of what works, what people click on, what they're going to be interested to read. And so I think there's a little bit less trial and error. And I'm more confident in the work that I'm doing because I know it's also based in our brand pillars as well. Like I don't have to get caught up on all of that, which is really important when it's a global brand to ladder back up to the master brand. Not everything is the same, but there's certainly like some consistent elements that because I have that background, I can really keep that in mind. So I think that a lot of what I was doing, the reason that I can be successful here in a short period of time is because the things that I was doing in my last role, like directly relate to what I'm doing here. But I'm also the type of person that, going from Bobble Bar to Hilton, like I could take that experience and directly relate it and learn new things and get caught up very quickly, but still find ways to build off what I've done in the past. Because I think that it's, what every job is different, but at the end of the day, like we're not reinventing the wheel. Like we're coming up with new creative ideas, but at its core, a lot of things are, can be, we can build upon the things that we've done previously.
So with COVID, obviously the entire travel and hotel industry has been completely decimated. Obviously you guys seem to be an outlier. Was there any period of time in the past year where the resort shut down, or was that not even a thing?
Yeah, last summer it did shut down for a while because the Maldives shut down for a while. But since reopening, there's not that many places that people can go to, and because this is a like a safe destination, and the way that this property has treated COVID safety with all of the COVID tests and the social distancing and the way that the staff has to quarantine before they arrive. And then as staff, we're all masked up. Like it's a very, very good place to go during a very bad time in the world. And so I think that we were, the property was able to make up for it, which is shown by the fact that they brought me in January. Like hospitality is not necessarily hiring right now, not the, best. When I left retail for hospitality was like the best, safest possible place you could go. Millennials and younger, everyone was spending money on experiences and not as many things. And then obviously no one could have seen this coming. So yeah, hospitality is definitely like a challenging place to be in 2020 and 2021. So I think I'm in a fairly unique situation that I ended up here during this time.
Yeah. And I'd imagine too that because of the nature of these, standalone bungalows with their own pools and everything, aside from the dining situation, there probably isn't too much congregating anyway, right?
No, and even dining, a lot of people prefer to eat in their villas because they're so big and so spacious, and there's like a full dining table outside plus another table and the swing beds, and like you never need to leave your villa unless you want to. And the restaurants, everything's outside. So even when you do go out to the restaurants, you're sitting outside, you're distanced and you're sitting outside. So the chance of interacting with another guest is pretty low. Like there's just not a lot of situations where you would. It's not the kind of property where people come to party. It's just, and actually like a lot of children as well, a lot of families, which was a surprise to me.
Interesting. And so how has like the Maldives in general treated COVID? Like when you arrive there, do you have to quarantine? Is there a mandatory quarantine period as
I
a
had to
guest?
quarantine for as a guest, no. As a guest,
Nope.
you have to come with a negative PCR test.
Gotcha.
So they do require PCR tests. And that's something that they're like very, very strict on, and there's no way around it.
Okay, makes sense. So I may butcher this, but let me try. Tell us about Ifnafushi. Did I say that right?
Oh, the private island, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the private island, it's the largest private island in the Maldives. You can have 24 people can stay there. And it has a beach villa, an overwater villa, another 4-bedroom residence, and it's like an amazing playground in the Maldives. And it goes for usually about between 75 and 85,000 a night, and it's amazing. I mean, people take it over because either they want safety because of COVID or they want privacy, but it's truly an incredible product and in very high demand. It recently launched, and it's like the ultimate vacation, and I think it speaks a lot to the type of clientele that we have here as well.
So is it never
Bucket
empty?
list.
Yeah, really.
It's very frequently taken, and yeah, people often stay for a while.
Yeah, like what's the longest you've seen?
I mean, I've only been here since January 1st, so like it's hard for me to answer that question, but people have been here for multiple weeks on end. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Must be like royalty and all sorts of craziness. You're like, I can't say, but you never know. That's awesome.
Confirm.
Cannot confirm or deny. Well, since I'm from a company called Influential, you knew I had to ask, what role do influencers and social media play in the marketing of the resort?
Huge. I mean, social media, I think, is big for this aspirational piece of things. And I think like any company, there's the content creators and then there's like the true influencers, and they're both very important and they play a very different role. So for us, the content that we're very frequently posting on social channels, the social team here is incredible. And they actually just won the Forbes Instagram account of the year.
Congrats.
And so, yeah, they're truly incredible. And, working with influencers, whether it was at Bobble Bar or at Hilton or here on property, it's the same. You have the influencers that create the most amazing content for you, and you can use that content in your email marketing, on your own channels. And it's like truly brand building content. And those people may or may not convert for you. In an ideal world, it's both, that they're converting for you and they're creating the most amazing content. But sometimes you need a very specific type of content. And sometimes you have influencers coming, and in the case here, the influencers are like celebrities, like not bloggers, but like true celebrities who are very, very influential, and their audience want to do what they're doing and can afford to. And I think that's what's maybe a little bit different than in retail, for example. Like, I think the true luxury fashion could probably be compared, but when we're talking like normal fashion, it's a little bit easier to find influencers whose followers can then afford to buy what these influencers are posting. Here, like, you really have to hit that high net worth audience, or it's just for aspirational purposes. And I think that this property does a really great job of balancing the two, so that, we have the content that we need and all of these marketing assets that we're working on, like that we have what we need to create the right type of content that is incredibly on brand, but then also that the influencers who may not be creating the most perfect content, but are hitting the right audience, are also here. So it's certainly a fine balance.
Yeah. And I'd imagine with like the content creators, they're in this for the business of that, and they're like, use anything and everything. But when it comes to like true like celebrity influencers, you probably have to let them speak for that, like let them post it, and that does everything. Like it would almost be tacky for a 5-star resort or a Waldorf to be like, oh, look at Ronaldo is here, or whatever it might be, you know? Yeah, definitely have to like walk that line.
And you like a content creator, you're giving like guidelines and shot lists and all of those things so that you get exactly what you need. You're not doing that with like true influencers. You know, you create an itinerary and there's things that you want them to do, but an experience and talk about, but not in the same way that you're doing for content creators.
Nice. And are you the kind of the core person that like handles all of that?
Not in this consulting role currently. I work with them for the strategies I'm working on. There's specific content needs that I have, or, you know, for the Stella Maris, these overwater villas, a big piece of this positioning is like the most romantic hideaway because it's only accessible by boat. You know, your breakfast is delivered daily. There's a spa treatment under the stars, all these things that make it the ultimate romantic getaway. And so then as part of the amplification plan, we needed influencers who were couples who are in the right demographic to be creating this content for us, because we don't want to hire, especially during COVID, like models to come in and do these shoots. So making sure that we have the right influencer coming with the right shot list, so then we can then turn it around quickly and make all of these other assets. It's one of the things that I just finished. So the brochure that I was working on for the sales team, I needed the content from the influencers with this new positioning in order to fuel the brochure. So I think that, you know, it all if a marketing team is run really well, and I think they're doing a great job here, like everyone works very closely together so that it's the same thing when I was talking about our brand magazine in corporate, like either you have content that just lives in print, or you work really closely with all of the teams that could possibly be using the content, and you use data to figure out like what's the content that's most important. And then you're able to distribute it amongst all of these channels and become really efficient with the budget that you have. So if the person handling influencer is in a silo and they're not thinking about like where else can this content be used, just our social media channel, then the budget is sort of wasted and we're not getting the most out of it. So I think the more everyone works together, the more efficient we become, and the you know, the budget can be stretched much further.
Yeah, nice. So I know you'd said it's a 3-month consultancy, so it probably is coming to an end soon. Is there a next plan on the horizon for you? Or, I mean, I would probably just try to stay.
I forgot about this question.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah. Ask me in a week. There's always something coming up.
I predict you stay.
Soon. Yeah. Follow me on LinkedIn. And perhaps there will be more updates soon. But for now, I can say this has been an incredible experience. 3 months living on an island feels like 3 years. It's a very interesting experience to live amongst your coworkers, and because of COVID, because you have to quarantine when you get here, like a lot of people haven't left the island in like 6 months, a year, like a very, very long time. Typically on this island, we're only 45 minutes from LA, the main city where the international airport is. Typically you can, at night after you're done working, you can take a speedboat into the city, like get a manicure, do whatever you want to do, go out to dinner. You can go to other nearby resorts for your day off, hang out at those resorts. But during COVID, no one can leave for safety. And it makes sense. Like, God forbid something happened. We wouldn't want that. But once we're here, we're safe. So it's a really intense environment. Like, I've never experienced anything like it. It's good in that you get to know people really, really quickly. And so I've been able to do so much because I've gotten to know people so quickly. And the more people you know, the more you can get done. But it's like if you ever went to summer camp and then you were a summer camp counselor, it's sort of like that, but you're doing like real nonstop collaborative work, and it can be really challenging. I'm sugarcoating it right now, but it can be very, very challenging.
I actually felt it through your words. I actually did.
It's
oh
like,
my gosh.
It's like a reality show.
That's amazing. Yeah, obviously they would never film it, but it would be great if they did. Is the island, is there, I can't do that. Is the island solely the resort, or is there anything else on it? Nothing else.
Nothing else. Nothing. No.
Wow.
But
And
the staff area has like a
left?
staff. No. You can't. You can't.
Oh,
At once, like people are starting to get vaccinated here, and I think in a couple months it'll change and they'll reopen the island so that you can go to other resorts. You can go into Maule. That's typically what it's like, and that's one of the benefits of being at a resort that's close to Maule, to the main city. But right now, like, no, you can't. If you leave the island for anything, like even if you have to go, there's a doctor on property, but let's say you had to go to the doctor in the main city for some reason, you'd have to quarantine for 10 days coming back, and we do that for the safety of the guests. It's really not possible to leave, but this is very specific to go in a few months' time. It'll be much different, and it'll be a totally different experience.
Yeah, it almost sounds like speedboats are like your Uber there.
Yeah, today the marketing team, we really wanted a cake, like a tiramisu cake. And so we ordered a cake from the main city, and it was delivered to us on our speedboat. Like, it just arrived on speedboat a few hours later. Like, I'm living in like a alternate reality where it's like the speedboat is the cool and the cake just like shows up. We ordered like cake bars.
Yeah. Like
So it's
idealistic
a very
Castaway.
different experience. Yeah. But you have to have in order to, because it's not just, in a normal office environment, you go to work, you do very good work, and then you go home and you can get away from it. Here, you can't get away from it. So you have to be like truly adaptable and have thick skin.
Yeah, I can imagine. So we're almost out of time, but I read that you're a founding advisory board member of the Women Leading Travel and Hospitality. Can you tell us about this organization and its mission?
Yeah, it's an incredible organization. I was actually on the board of the Women in Retail Leadership, which for me in retail was, I'm a strong believer in networking. Where I am in my career today is I can thank all of the people who helped me get here and who mentored me and, who helped lead me in the right decision and gave me guidance. And this is now an offshoot of that Women in Retail Leadership organization, bringing together women in hospitality. And I think it's so important for women to get together and discuss their challenges and to network. And these networks really can make or break careers. And so I find it to be incredibly valuable and one of the best ways that I can use my time, because I learn so much from those around me. And, being able to talk about other people in your industry can be incredibly helpful. So for someone like me, joining hospitality after years in e-commerce and retail, being part of an organization like this with a lot of hospitality veterans, learning from them, they're able to learn more from my retail experience. Like, it strengthens everything that we do together. And they put out incredible content, really like help educate us on a regular basis. So I cannot recommend it enough. Women in Retail Leadership, if you're in retail, or Women Leading Hospitality.
Super cool. And I know I read in your article, you had mentioned how experiences in groups like this, and you equated it, and this is a great way to tap out to Emily, is that, experiences like this in groups, especially brand innovators, for example, that has enriched both you and I so much, is really critical to building out your reputation and establishing yourself in an industry.
Yeah, completely. I agree. It's true.
Thank you guys both so much. I loved your final note there, Nina, just on, you've worked in so many different industries and how bringing those insights from one to the next is so valuable and getting to bounce those ideas off of other people. So really, really great to have you both here, and jealous of you spending time in the Maldives right now. But hope you guys have a good rest of your afternoon, and thank you again for being here.
Thanks, Nina. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, Chris.
Bye. Talk to you soon.
Well, we are excited to bring on our next panel. We're going to be hearing from Tony Ambrosa, the Chief Brand Officer at Carhartt. And moderating this session will be Eric Weiss, the VP of Retail and CPG at Neustar. Love the background you guys got there. The brand innovators, merchandise. So glad to see everyone's got their videos working. So I'll hand it over to you guys.
Yeah, I was able to figure it out. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. I don't know how you got the marketing innovation right. Mine is backwards for some reason.
No, it presents forward to the viewer, but we get to see ourselves in yes, the mirror image of ourselves. Okay. It's quite wonderful.
Oh, okay. When I see myself, it's backwards. But so, well, anyway, I'm very pleased to be here today. She said, I'm Eric Weiss. I run the retail and CPG verticals for Neustar. Just really quickly, Neustar, we're a unified identity, both offline identity and online identity, and unified analytics provider for a lot of the largest retailers, as well as CPG companies and other verticals as well. And I'm really pleased to have Tony Ambrosa, Chief Brand Officer at Carhartt, but I'll let you, introduce yourself if there's anything else you want to add.
Well, just good afternoon to everybody out there. And obviously, if you'd asked me a year ago if I would be having this conversation with you, Eric, I would have called you crazy. And at least having a conversation like this. But here we are 1 year later, and I have to say thank you to everyone out there that's continued to make this possible for the brands and businesses, and really for all of us. So well, thanks to everyone.
Yeah, and it's great. It's great to still have these conversations. I guess under normal circumstances we'd be in person, which would be nice. But we all adapt. And speaking of which, this past year, I think we've seen incredible innovation across every industry. I think Tony and I were talking earlier, and I was explaining like going to a doctor remotely and getting a blood test in my neighborhood, and like how everything is so efficient now. I got a text when it was time to come in, so I spent very little time there. And I think certainly in retail, I think we've seen this really accelerate. Like retail's been disrupted by innovation for many years pre-pandemic. But then I think some people have said sort of, COVID was sort of like the chief innovation officer in a way, because it sort of forced people to, for survival to adapt. And so, along those lines, maybe you could talk a little bit about Carhartt and just some of the innovation that's been expedited in this past year, and some of the things that you've done to adjust to keep people safe, and as well as your business healthy.
Sure. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, no, at Carhartt, I have the pleasure of also leading our direct-to-consumer business, as well as the brand direction and all of the communication functions that roll into it. And we immediately, all of us started to shift and think differently and change what we were trying to do and how we were operating. But we also had to navigate the reality that our stores were closing for a period of time. And we entered really that March, April, May window, not knowing what the future really looked like, but we immediately started to receive signals from consumers that the future was going to be very digital, and the future was going to remove friction. And it was going to be on us and all of our great retail partners out there as well to figure out how we could basically take our 3-year technology roadmap and get it done in about 6 months. And I know we're not alone in that, challenge as well. But as everyone has said, the pandemic supercharged the consumer's adoption of digital. And nowadays, I think one of the phrases I saw recently was hybrid shopping, which is the simple idea that a lot of the shopping is happening digitally. Now, they may be transacting physically, whether it's a buy online pickup in store or a curbside pickup, or they're just going into the store, but you're seeing them convert at higher rates, and also the market basket size is growing as well. So we had to shift quickly and really ramp up the work that we were doing to accelerate some of the services we provided directly. And a lot of that turned into curbside pickup solutions with our retail stores, because we're about to, there's a team, they've been working through this entire pandemic harder than ever to keep up with the consumer adoption rate, because our traffic has been climbing on average 50, 60, 70% higher each day versus the prior year. And it continues to trend in that direction for us. So we're very fortunate to be seeing that type of traffic to Carhartt.com. But at the same time, we're about to launch a brand new website, brand new platform, entirely new experience. Our company's going to be launching a new ERP system as well. And the whole effort has been around streamlining and removing friction from that consumer shopping experience. So we had to come up with temporary solutions in 2020 to really meet the consumer where they were at. And then we're continuing to accelerate that as we look at 21. But also, we had so many retail partners that shifted so quickly to curbside, to buy online, pick up in store, to local delivery. And they were able to maintain their business and really continue to serve, the essential workers. And the good fortune of being a workwear brand is that so many of the people who buy Carhartt absolutely need it for the jobs that they were still pursuing and doing, because most of those folks weren't shifting to a virtual work environment like we are, right? Where we're having on these video conferences. They're actually still having to engage in the real world to accomplish and do their jobs and to keep the economy going. So a ton of innovation, a ton of acceleration. And we were also, though, we had the very good fortune of so much of our, basically our technology roadmap was already moving in this direction. We've just accelerated. We're gonna hire, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 people, all in pursuit of digital acceleration across all of our businesses, direct to consumer, as well as our wholesale and what we call our CCG business, which is basically outfitting work crews in a single uniform program as well.
Got it. Well, along those lines, like you mentioned that you run your direct to consumer business, but there's still a retail business. You mentioned a wholesale. So you have channel partners. So how in the past year, how have these complemented each other and influenced your roadmap?
Yeah, the simplest way to think about it is like a investment portfolio, right? So when we think about the different businesses we have, and we have a business in Europe as well. So when we first started to ramp down and shut, and we knew we were going to have to pull back, we didn't see a lot of revenue coming in from our wholesale business for the immediate future, but we were able to offset it to the best of our ability, not dollar for dollar by any stretch, because we're still not at that stage yet. But our direct to consumer business ramped up, and that was providing important cash flow to continue to support the operation, so we could keep all of our associates employed and really continue to do what we could to protect them and do right by them. As our wholesale marketplace started to steady itself, in addition to some of our e-commerce only partners out there, we really started to see them ramp up all of these solutions. And it really did a great job of helping us balance and navigate during the pandemic all of the uncertainty that we were experiencing, because the consumer was able to find Carhartt on their terms still. And really, of the two legs of the stool that were incredible was the wholesale and the e-commerce D2C business. But our uniform business actually then started to ramp up as well. And that's something that we certainly, benefited from down the stretch as we looked at Q3, Q4, during the pandemic, because companies were coming online. They were needing that gear. They were needing to continue to outfit their associates and employees. So, but think about it as, it's really like a portfolio, and, one can go up while the other to offset the other. And we had the good fortune of having that ability to do that early on. But then we started to see each of the business units start to stabilize. And now we've really been able to see how we can lean into the needs of the marketplace and the consumer and navigate this uncertainty in 21 and beyond.
Yeah, understood. And I like that analogy, the portfolio and the different groups. And, along those lines, it's clear that you have a sort of sense of who your customer is and a segment, and there's a segmentation schema. Yeah. And so, how do you, when you have these different channels in different places, how do you break down your different customer groups? How do you sort of connect them? Are they potentially customers in different places, maybe different identifiers, and then understand who they are holistically, and then be able to sort of segment them, so message appropriately, and then find more of them, right? So if you could just talk to that a little bit.
Well, I would say that's a continuous work in progress, right? So that feedback loop's always happening. So we have three primary consumer segments that we've identified, and they're really mindsets with need states. What are those need states they have for the types of products and services we provide? So within those three segments, we look at those need states and how we can tap into them and really support them from a brand and a product standpoint. And then at that next level, we look at our business units and we ask ourselves, okay, how are we best positioned to reach and service these consumer segments with what retail channels So within our wholesale portfolio, the channels that we can reach the consumer through that portfolio, through D2C, who are those primary consumer audiences. So we have first party data that allows us to better understand the people that visit us directly. And that gives us a clear view into these segments. And really there are additional segments as well, but they're just not primary segments that we're pursuing for long-term, viable growth. But that gives us a very clear read then on the audiences and how we're progressing towards our goals. And then with CCG, it's slightly different, right? Because you're dealing with a decision maker that isn't always the end user or wearer of the product, right? So that really comes down to the strength that you have with these audiences and their influence on that decision maker. So when you boil it all down, though, we start with the consumers. Our corporate strategic plan is very clear. We're going to grow into the future in two critical ways: with our consumer segments and the growth that we have there, and we're prioritizing them. And that then leads to the prioritization of resources across business units and strategies, and then removing friction from the overall experience. And that's an internal friction and an external friction, right? Because we have to be able to continue to provide them the services and experiences and products on their terms. And we don't think anybody's going back to a world where they want more friction back into their shopping experience, right? They've all become very accustomed to the convenience of being able to leverage digital tools to know exactly what you're getting before you go into a store.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting insight that people are now shopping online, but then they're not necessarily purchasing online. They're still maybe coming in, but it's more frictionless. It's quicker. I think you mentioned the shopping carts are larger now. So they're doing a lot of research. They're not browsing as much, which is interesting to think about.
Well, we're seeing that just in our own retail stores, our own brick and mortar, and then with our partner accounts, our traffic is actually back up year on year. Pre-pandemic, so those first really 2.5 months, Jan, Feb, and the first couple of weeks of March, we were experiencing a return of increased number of shoppers. But what we're seeing as well is they're coming in ready to buy. So very high conversion rates. They absolutely know what they're looking for. They walk in the store, they get what they're looking for, they go to the cash register, and they're on their way.
Yeah, I mean, how many? I'm sure it's very applicable to other industries. How many of us now, if we're going to pick up lunch, we order it in advance, and then we just go in and grab it. It's so much easier. Why did we ever wait online before?
Well, it's like your doctor appointment, right? Who has to waste time now in the lounge waiting for the doctor? You could wait at home, and then they ping you online. So.
Right, or they text you when it's time to come in. You can go get a cup of coffee. You don't have to sit there in the the waiting room with sick people. So it is interesting to see how much moving forward. You imagine some of this will just remain, right? It's just the easier way to do business. So maybe let's talk a little bit about measurement. So, there's always the right balance between branding and direct response. So, the sort of, upper funnel, lower funnel, mid funnel, and so if you could talk a little bit about how you look at those places in the buying cycle, and just how then you measure and to prove that your marketing is working.
So look, just like so many brands and marketing leaders out there, we're trying to figure out how to right size and balance the shift of so much of your media money going to that ROAS based, mid funnel, conversion oriented, last touch attribution, media execution, right? And that's a heavy lift for a lot of marketers, because it's very clear to be able to show to somebody who's a decision maker in the budgeting process, yeah, give me this and I can give you a ROAS of this, right? And at this level, it's profitable. But what you have to continue to show, though, is all of the work that goes into making that ROAS possible. So one of the things that we're moving towards more than ever is being able to clearly articulate in connection to our corporate strategy. Like if we are charged to build awareness and relevance with 2 new consumer segments. So in order to do that, we're going to have to invest in upper funnel media and storytelling to really start to generate that connection, emotional connection, as well as just who in the heck is Carhartt? What are they all about? What do they stand for? Before we can convince somebody to even consider us and then purchase us. So we're very focused now on, okay, we're going to be able to measure, this type of work, these investments on awareness and relevance against these segments that are definitely identified in our strategy. And then at that mid funnel section, that's the area we know we have to keep filling for it to remain a high ROAS. But I think like so many of us out there, and if anybody out there has all the answers, and I have to be careful because somebody will definitely want to sell me the solution probably too. But there's certainly that balance of search versus all the other forms right of that mid funnel. And we recognize that, look, when a consumer is searching for your brand, clearly something triggered it, right? And one of the things we're all trying to search for is, okay, what are those key triggers that we can start to do more of that are going to generate that search that's going to lead to that conversion? But in that mid funnel area, that's really where we spend a lot of focus on our digital direct response forms of media in absolute support of our business units, those business units that I shared with you earlier. And that's the role of those marketing dollars. Yeah, you've got to be able to convert that awareness and relevance into a sale. And then below that, though, an area that we haven't always labeled it this, but we're shifting it in that direction, which is loyalty, which is, it's not our loyalty program because we have that, but we're saying we do a lot of what we call, lean in or, always on forms of storytelling. And really the purpose of it has always been the folks that love the brand or who are part of the brand, we want to continue to give them more reasons to come back to the brand, and it not be a promotion or an offer or just a selling them a new product. We want to also continue to engage with them through the stories, the consumers, the actions of the company and our employees as well, and different things that we all celebrate together. So that's what we have down there in that loyalty portion, and that we're able to measure through our first party data as well. We get the sentiment ratings and all of the overall feedback, response loops and engagement ratings as well that help us better understand, the real impact of that work.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, and when you think about it, what all of us are trying to do though is right size it, right? Because like a funnel in awareness, that should really be where a lot of your media spend is. And then the conversion is the next, and then that loyalty would be a smaller section of it because it's a smaller sized audience. But I think a lot of us, we're finding ourselves like it's starting, it looks more, like, the top of it isn't the hourglass you'd like it to be. I mean, the hourglass bubble is kind of in that middle. And so what we've all had a lot of work to do, and we're continuing this, is we've got to right size it. We got to balance it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's something you mentioned the middle a lot, which I guess that's we call it the movable middle. Because that's the sort of segment of the population that's actually could be influenced by your marketing. Because if you think about it, if they're lower funnel, they're on your website, they're already a loyal customer, why spend a ton of marketing on them if they were going to go in and purchase the products anyway, right? That doesn't necessarily make sense. But what ends up happening, I think, we find is that paid search would get a lot of the credit, right? When you're looking at last touch. But what if you were to remove TV or remove, all the other branding or everything else you do, suddenly the paid search wouldn't work as well. So there is that, and there's that sort of the sense of incrementality, right? Return, like what is the incremental impact my marketing is actually having? And I imagine you must have seen this as well. We've had a lot of customers that, I don't know, if they're a big box retailer, they might have some analytics that tells them they did a great job in marketing this year, but they know that in fact their marketing performed well because people were hoarding toilet paper and they were just running and buying everything. It had nothing to do with the marketing, and so how do you? It's understanding sort of, and I clearly you get this, right? It's understanding the relationship between all these investments and frankly things like the economy and the weather and macroeconomic events like we've experienced. And that, of course, together in combination is what is really, I guess, essentially how you would measure your marketing.
We know those big triggers. Over the last year, stimulus checks are a massive trigger for retail. Massive. We see it the moment they start to deposit into bank accounts. We see it in traffic. We see it in online traffic to the website, and start to see it in sales as well. So there's no doubt. I mean, and that was a variable that didn't exist right before the pandemic. But you used to look at tax return season. Tax return season was also a good trigger. Of course, everybody has holiday triggers that they track and that they monitor. But I mean, you started to see these new variables pop up weather and economy were always huge drivers for Carhartt. I mean, obviously, we're a brand that's built to outfit people who are working really hard at jobs. The more jobs they have, the more they're working, the more gear they need because they start to wear it out more often. The colder it gets, the more layers they need to layer up on. They're working outside. They don't have the benefit of going in an office, to do their job most of the time. So.
Right. No, that is interesting. And I'm curious, the stimulus checks, that is interesting. It's not something I thought of. Do you think, I mean, I must.
Well, I'm waiting for a company like you guys to come out with a report to be like, hey, look at this economic impact of immediate consumer, purchasing power.
Yeah.
Because literally, I'm not here to say that everyone's using it for that. A lot of people are using it to pay credit card debts and rent.
Right.
And they're buying food at grocery stores too. But there is no doubt it has a direct correlation.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm curious. I mean, it must have a correlation for all retail, but I'm curious if your business in particular, for some reason, would have the demographic, the segment. I'm just curious if you found that perhaps at Carhartt it was more sensitive to demand based on a stimulus check.
Well, we've never had any other variable to measure it against. I can tell you this: we're gonna have to figure it out next year, right? So we're gonna have these blips. And we're gonna have blips ahead of us in the year in the months ahead, right? And we're gonna have to say, okay, last year at this time was when a stimulus check landed. They're not getting it this time around necessarily, right? So, what will that delta look like as a result of the consumer not having this disposable income suddenly, available to them to allow them to buy what they're looking for? So, yeah, no, we likely, there's no doubt when you correlate. The average income, of a blue collar working class American, right? In today's world, blue collar is an old term, obviously, but when you think about the working class and in that middle class household, they're the ones that are largely, receiving these checks, these payments for good reason. For very good reason. I mean, they're most of them are most at need, but obviously that's a new variable for us and something that you don't plan into your business.
Right, but I guess that would explain if your core audience is the one who's receiving the checks and they're using it. It makes sense that would have an impact on all businesses, but it might have a stronger impact on your business. And certainly, you're going to want to understand when certain marketing campaigns were running and there was suddenly an increase in sales. Well, how much of it was because we did a great job as marketers, and how much was it just because our customers had some more money and their clothes they needed refreshing, so they went out and they bought some new clothes. So yeah, those are definitely it's interesting. They can impact everyone, but certainly different advertisers, different marketers are going to be impacted.
Well, it's like the old saying. I mean, just because they chose us with something we didn't control, we had to do a lot of work to be the brand they still chose, right? So
that's a good point.
Like we still say when it's cold out, they have a lot of choices to buy other products besides Carhartt, but we've always been able to connect cold weather and Carhartt sales. But the next question you always have to ask yourself is, well, why are they choosing Carhartt, right? And then what do we need to do to always make sure that when the weather is in our favor, they continue to do that? Yeah. And that's an investment that we've been making for a long time, and we're going to continue to do that, both in the way we build the product, but also in the way that we tell the stories and feature it. So.
Right, and I imagine it's going to influence the long-term thinking, right? Again, it's not just all lower funnel, right? It's also, yes, there's that movable middle, but it's also how do we keep the brand fresh, people thinking of us so that when they have a stimulus, a new job, there's something that they do that they're going to spend those dollars with you, of course.
And look, I'd be remiss in saying I work for a privately owned, family-owned company. The founding family still owns Carhartt. So we have the benefit of a long-term view. And an owner and CEO that really cares about the long-term view. And we've been able to build and grow and really, develop a much significantly higher awareness because of that long-term view over time.
Oh, it's interesting. Are there certain channels, by the way, that are preferred over others? I mean, along those lines, do you do a lot of branding versus direct response? Just, understanding your mix and how you're communicating with those customers.
Yeah, well, I would say over the last, I've been with Carhartt now, this is my 11th year. So the first 3 to 4 years, we were doing a lot of heavy brand building to really start to develop the brand dimension and start to broaden in the depth and reach of the consumer audience as well. Still wasn't, look, it wasn't on a stage of a Levi's, right? I mean, Levi's is in the high 90s. But what we were really trying to do is broaden and deepen the awareness really of our audiences that were our primary target audience, because Carhartt was still recognized just for being an outerwear winter weather brand.
Right.
So we broaden the depth and perspective of the consumer to think about Carhartt year round and become a year round relevant brand. We've been able to do that, and we then invested into more. I would say we shifted probably too much into that DR, that middle funnel, that movable middle. We shifted a lot there. We're now at a point in time where we have to reinvest in that awareness end again, to continue to build the long-term awareness and relevance of the brand for future generations. Because it's easy to say when you're 132 years old, you don't reach 132 years without continuing to appeal to each new generation, that would reach for your brand and product. So we're focused on that right now.
Well, and it's great, and it's amazing over that period of time. You see a lot of fashion sort of brands or whatever it might be sort of go in and out of style, so to speak. And it seems like you have that core audience that continues to grow, which is real great testament to the work you're doing. We also earlier when we spoke, you mentioned that it was sort of that it's not just men, it's not just outdoor work. I mean, the demographic is shifting, so I'm just curious how that is manifesting itself today.
Absolutely. Well, we're always going to build and solve for rugged outdoor work, primary indoor work as well, but rugged outdoor work is the primary place we solve for it. Our focus right now, though, is to say, okay, how do we help more people understand the value of product that's built for that? Because our simple saying is, do you want a product that was built for for a workwear site that can work really well on an outdoor hike? Or do you just want a product that you can only wear hiking and you'd never absolutely ever do anything else in your yard, or if you had any DIY projects in that product as well?
Right.
So just in simple terms, our job isn't to leave workwear. Our job is to help more people understand the value of it, because the folks that have been wearing Carhartt for a long time, they've been doing this forever. They buy Carhartt and they wear it job to passion plays in the outdoors to going out to dinner with friends and family, depending on, and they have versions of Carhartt. The old Carhartt is on the job, to outdoors, and the newer Carhartt, they break in wearing it to family gatherings and events. So
yeah, excellent. And what about women? I mean, is that
women? It's one of the fastest growing segments of our business today, and we're absolutely committed to investing in that growth ongoing. And we've been really featuring and telling stories around the amazing women who wear Carhartt for about the last 5 years now, and we're going to continue to build upon that as well. We're going to accelerate that consumer audience.
Okay, that's excellent. Well, obviously there's a huge additional population there to grow. So
hey, and the women we meet and work with along the way. I mean, I know they have a video from our Guinness campaign that we did recently, and we feature an amazing woman in that video in our story that we told around make your own parade that we partnered with Guinness on, because we felt like people needed an uplifting message and story too. Coming into February and March, two very dark months, during this time of year. So this will give you a good idea of how we've been featuring women, if you have a second to roll this 60.
Yeah.
Can you believe it? It's almost the 17th again. This year may feel a little different, but last I checked, it's still St. Paddy's Day. Flags will be flying. There'll be plenty of luck to go around. And the spirit of St. Paddy's will be as strong as ever. So grab a pint and throw on your Guinness and Carhartt gear. Make your own parade this year. Happy St. Paddy's Day from Guinness and Carhartt.
That's fantastic. So, clearly, you have a powerful brand, powerful demo, great first party data. And I know I've heard analogies of people saying data is the new oil, right? Especially when you have walled gardens and cookies are going away. And so suddenly you have retailers that are developing media businesses because of the data they have. And so it's interesting to see this partnership that you just did with Guinness, and obviously they're leveraging. So maybe a little talk about how are you leveraging the power of that relationship you have with that core demo for other types of partnerships. Oh, are you on mute? You're on mute, Tony.
Good catch. The age-old, I'm on mute.
Yeah.
That'll get old. I can't wait for the day we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Right.
So Guinness has been a great partner, and they were a brand that we wanted to partner with because they're actually double our age. They're, I think, 265 years old, and phenomenal story. Absolutely impressive what they're all about and what they say and do. And so we felt just a kinship, and celebrating St. Patty's Day is an awesome opportunity for us to do in partnership with them. And when we think about our audiences, and it really, based on our first party data, it rings really true. We see the audiences respond to it exactly how we'd like to. With those, we call them our tried and trues, and they absolutely respond in a big way to the storytelling. And we had a collection of product, and I'm pretty sure it's completely sold out. If you can find a size or two, you might be lucky.
Right.
It's been pretty slim for the last 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
But that's the value of them. Really, how can we? That's one of those in the loyalty spectrum. How can we really re-engage, reconnect in a meaningful way, in a positive way, as well, in a time of year when it's just not a Feb March isn't unless you're down south, maybe.
Right.
It's tough. Sledding up in Michigan.
Well, this year it was snowing in Texas. It's been an unusual year on many levels. So yeah, along those lines with certainly loyalty and data, how do you, certainly people, you're collecting a lot of data, but people, of course, they move, they change their name, they have multiple email addresses. So they're communicating with you in many ways, coming to the store, ordering online. So just maybe talk to how do you sort of, from an omni-channel strategy, how do you sort of keep all that fresh? And so that when you're engaging with them, that you're engaging with them, that you know who you're engaging with, and you're engaging with them in the right way.
So when you say are you talking about our data fresh? Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah, just in general, you're having online data, offline data, things, cookies expire, people, even the offline data, people move, they change their name, they change their phone number, and so just, since your first party data is so powerful for you, how do you make sure that you're actually leveraging it, that that's actually accurate and up to date, and that it's you know who your customer is across these different channels?
Yeah, well, it comes down to a great collaboration and partnership with our data science team, and the dashboard they developed called we call it Cart Canvas, and it really gives us a very clear view into the audiences. I can go there now and I can get a read on who was shopping us yesterday.
Right.
And how that breaks down, and compare and contrast it by style of product. Or if you want to see a color, who was buying all of our pocket t-shirts in color red, we can get by the psychographics. I'm not going to get it by Eric Weiss in your home address, right? We're very focused on that privacy aspect of it, of course, for everybody, but I can really get a clear sense and a clear picture. If we have a day where our numbers are off the charts, we can go in there the next day and be like, who was this? Who's visiting? Who's responding? And then, of course, we can connect it to the channels of media, right? Because we have the ability to, of course, understand how we're connecting with them, or in driving them towards our website or towards our stores, as well. Now, the challenge we have, though, is we're not a pure D2C business, right? So as we talked about, we have multiple business units.
Right.
So what we get is we get that sample set that gives us a good read on the consumer visiting us. But one of the things that we really value now, and obviously the pandemic supercharged this, is more people than ever coming directly to brands, not always to buy, but they're certainly doing a lot of research, and they're certainly doing a lot of deep diving into the different product catalog elements. So we have that benefit as well for us, in the sense that we definitely know the traffic is up, conversion's up too, but traffic is up to such levels that people are doing their research before they choose or look for Carhartt out at stores. And we have that on our website. We can help you find our product at retail stores as well that aren't just Carhartt owned and operated.
Right. Excellent. So you're communicating them on many levels. Okay, great. So we do have one question that came in, and about demos and needing to build, the brand again. Is the presence? The question was about CTV. So maybe just a little bit of the, we can make it broader about the marketing mix in general. Have you found like certain channels? Are you experimenting? Are certain performing better? How are you measuring it? That would be helpful.
So, well, we're just kicking off this focus on that awareness now. Again, a newfound, because I'll be transparent. I don't know, maybe a few retailers were able to build awareness in 2020, but a lot of folks were focused on other things in 2020.
Right.
So as we're exploring it right now, I have a meeting actually after this with our media team to go through their initial media plans on what the mix will look like. A lot of the buying that we do, we've been largely digital and over-the-top TV for probably 4.5 to 5 years. We shifted away from, just basic, regular television and cable quite a while ago. We just found that given our spending levels and really what we were trying to accomplish, it didn't really match up that well with what we're trying to do. So we're obviously exploring, though, now that everyone's cut the cord, it seems more than ever, what does that connected TV look like, and what will the mix, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing actually later this afternoon from the media team. What will that mix be? But right now I can't tell you I know.
Okay, no,
but we know the segments and we know the history of how we've been doing. We have a lot of great data through our media agency that really helps us understand the folks that we're reaching to and where they are. Like we look at it as day parts too, because you're not always interested in shopping or buying clothes every hour of every day. There are certain day parts too that make a really big difference, in when a person's more open or apt to receive a message or even a brand story as well.
Right. Certainly it's not just the person, it's also the context and around it and what they're reading. And certainly there's so many factors that influence the impact a campaign could have. So what, we have a few minutes left. What do you think, in the lessons that you've learned, like moving into the future for the next, assuming we get out of this soon enough, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, what do you see sort of the next, couple years? Like, where do you see the company moving?
Absolutely. Well, look, we're really focused on those two pivotal areas of removing friction. We have to continue to find ways to help people shop on their terms. So many of us as brands are focused on convincing someone to shop on our terms, and yet the power is in a consumer's hand. It's in the mobile device they own and operate. So we're working our tails off. We have teams working harder than ever on continuously finding ways to take out that friction. And that is going to be in 3 years. Like, I hope in 3 years, you'll be able to see Carhartt as one of the easiest to purchase apparel brands, out there, and I don't mean that by over distribution. I mean that from just a truly embracing the way consumers expect and need to shop from brands. And then, the other aspect of it is women and these next generation consumer targets that we have. We're very bullish and we're very committed to building this brand with those audiences to make sure that we're outfitting them for the work and the lifestyles they're going to lead into the future, to make sure that we're a part of the group that's going to build a better world of tomorrow, because building a better world together with hardworking people is our purpose. And that's something we'll be tracking and measuring. I don't have a 3-year target yet, but I'll have a 3-year target in about 6 to 9 months. So.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I mean, that's a great summary. I mean, it sounds like to me, you're connecting in multiple channels. You're engaging with your customers. You're building your brand. You're recognizing the lower touch things, but what they are. You're focusing on the movable middle and where you can actually influencing while keeping an eye on the strategy of how do we continue to build our brand so that people think of us. So even when they have money in their pockets, they're going to come purchase from you. And obviously you're measuring all those different touch points, those different segments, and then those different parts of the sales cycle. So well done. So thank you. So it's been really great having this conversation with you. And Emily, why don't I give it back to you?
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I have to say the Carhartt brand is definitely growing for the female segment. Many of my friends have, especially the beanies. Everyone has a Carhartt beanie. So you guys are doing a great job in growing that segment. But thank you both so much for being here. And we hope to have you back again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.
You got it.
Thanks.
All right. Take care, Eric.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Emily.
Bye, Emily.
Thanks. Have a good one. Well, we're excited to move right into our last fireside chat of the day. We'll be hearing from Aaron Levzow, the Vice President of Marketing Technology at Del Taco Restaurants. And moderating this session will be Casey Sarin, the CEO of Spaceback. Hi, Aaron. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. Good to see you. Hey, Casey.
Great to see you.
Hi.
Glad to have you guys both back on our stage. Excited to have you closing out our Marketing Innovation Day. So I'll hand it over to you because I know our audience is excited to hear from you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, excited to be here. How are you doing, Aaron?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Excited.
Good. Yeah. We're rounding out the day. So real quick introduction. I'm Casey Sarin. I am the co-founder and CEO at Spaceback. And our company helps brands convert social media experiences into display ads. So most brands' best content is done in social, and it's a way to leverage that great work to power programmatic, which is, a lot of times display ads are more of an afterthought to the kind of quality that's happening on social. So that's what we do. Aaron, I'd love if you could start with introducing yourself and your role at Del Taco.
Absolutely. Aaron Levzow, Vice President of Marketing Technology for Del Taco Restaurants, a 600 restaurant unit chain based out of California. I do live in Wisconsin, so a little bit different there, and throughout the US. So, and excited about a growing company that I'm with. Joined in September of 2020, so right mid-pandemic, and have been doing a lot of great work with the team.
Cool. And one thing that I thought was fascinating about your role is it was actually created post-pandemic. Like you just joined last year. So tell us a little about what it's like how do you design a role? I think you worked with your org to create the role. How did you do that? And how is that process coming into a job like that during this time different than maybe what it looks like for the previous places you worked?
Well, I think one thing we learned during the pandemic is that we accelerated technology, not just in QSR, but in all facets. We saw technology speed up real fast, and there was a need for it because people couldn't just walk into a store anymore. They couldn't walk, everything was shut down. So the only way to get your message, whether through advertising or through experiential, whatever it might be, was through digital technology in one form or another. So Tim, who is our CMO, he reached out and said that they were building this position and what did it look like. And he had this idea. It didn't exist before. It was a piece of the puzzle, but a smaller piece of the puzzle. And he knew that it was going to continue to grow and continue to be important and even grow faster now during the pandemic. And so after a lot of conversations, Del Taco is an amazing company. It already has amazing food, but also an amazing group of people to work with. And when I say amazing, like I'm sure everybody's like, my team's amazing. My team's amazing. Like they are so passionate, and it's this feeling of like, whatever you need, I'm here to help you. And you're more worried about having to be like, no, take a break, like go take a break. Like you're fine. Thanks for like, people want to work hard because they're passionate about driving the business forward. And everybody in the organization is like that cross-functionally. So it made it easy to want to join that team and to want to drive marketing technology, which I have a strong passion for because I geek out over it and what's next and what futuristic things can happen. And so we started talking, and by September, I think my first day was September 14th. I was ready to go. And I still have yet to meet almost everybody that I work with in real life.
Yeah, that's crazy that you have such a strong bond with the team without ever meeting anyone in person. So with creating this new role, like what were some of the things that were most important to you? Did you need more organizational freedom, or like what were the things that like in creating the role that you asked for?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I believe that if you're a good marketer, you can market anything. And so I have worked in restaurant, I've worked in retail, I've worked in hotels, casinos, hospitality, you name it, fine dining all the way down to QSR or even food trucks, right? And I truly do believe that if you are a marketer worth your salt, you're going to be successful no matter what it is you're marketing, because you'll understand what the consumer wants. So then to me, it was less about like, all right, what am I marketing? And it was more about who am I doing it with and who are those people? And so for me, it's about finding the team that I mesh with the best, that is open to ideas and is positive and wants to be inclusive. And that was really exciting. So when I say, that's what I mean when I say they're an amazing team, like people just fit together to push the business forward. And it's so diverse and dynamic, the types of people inside of the organization, but all with the same goal. And that's exciting. And that's what I was looking for when joining. It made it a very easy. Also, QSR doing really well right now. And I did leave. I was the CMO at Marcus Hotels and Resorts before this. Love that company as well, but hospitality will return and absolutely will rebound. It's just going to take a little bit longer.
Yep. Tell us about some of the things that you've been able to do since September, because you mentioned that able to do a whole lot more, faster, these days. What are some of those things that you've gotten done that might have been harder without just not during the pandemic?
Yeah, the good news is so I joke that my job is to do anything that touches a digital device, whether it's a phone or a computer, which means everything, right? Everything that we do touches some sort of digital device. And the group really accepted me right away in a way that was like, didn't we just hire someone? We should call her and get her input. And so I was very quickly onboarded, whether it was looking at what a digital menu board might look like in the future, or marketing technology. Like we have an app, an offers engine app, and getting involved with that. Our delivery service providers, which I'll be honest, when I joined, they kept calling them DSPs. And I know DSPs to mean demand side platform. So I was like, well, I don't understand what this means. And come to find out that DSPs mean delivery service providers in this case. And so it's your Uber Eats, your Postmates, your DoorDash, your Grubhub, and getting involved with those conversations, which are necessary right now because a lot of people can't leave their house. They need a way to order delivery. And we found that online ordering, delivery, all of that, very, very vital right out of the gate once the pandemic hit, right? We all saw that March and April were to think back just a year ago and think, I still thought we were only 2 weeks into it and we were going to come out of it. I remember when we had to tell people at my last position, like we had to lay them off we were like, it's just 2 weeks, leave your stuff at your office. Like we'll all be back together soon. So not true, but it's weird to think back. But once we got through March and April, we quickly saw online ordering, all of those things just skyrocket for the industry. And so I've been able to onboard into all of those things very, very quickly. And then if you had listened, our CEO recently spoke about the fact that we will be launching loyalty in the fall. And I am actively working on a CRM project.
Cool. That's super exciting. And aside from all the screens, one thing we mentioned when we were talking earlier is consumer behavior hasn't only changed in terms of how we interact with screens, also with people commuting less or working like different hours at home. How are those kind of changes impacting Del Taco's business, and maybe how do those changes even relate to how you think about engagements on digital?
Yes. So when people changed their travel patterns, right? They stayed home. They didn't have to commute to work every day. All QSR saw that breakfast, which is so important. People don't make it a event. Everybody doesn't get together and go, you know what, guys, let's all go get breakfast at this QSR restaurant this morning. Like, no, it's a swing by, right? You drive through the drive-through, you grab your breakfast on your way to wherever you're going. But people weren't going anywhere. So of course, as a QSR space, we saw breakfast take a hit. But at the same time, with late night, when you look at late night menus, there are plenty of restaurants who make a lot of money on late night, bars, etc. They couldn't during the pandemic because it was shut down. And I jokingly say that, like, I lived in Vegas for 10 years and I loved going to Del Taco in the late wee hours of the morning. But you're not doing that because you're not out and about. We saw other types of dinner and other meal times do very well. So did the rest of the QSR space. And the other thing we saw was because people had nowhere to go, while they weren't going out as a group for breakfast, people were getting together and being like, I don't know, what do you want for dinner? And like a husband and a wife and kids, they'd be like, I don't know, maybe we should go through the drive-through. And everybody's like, I'll come, because people just wanted out of their house. So now you have entire families coming through the drive-through because that's the only experiential thing they could do during the shutdown. And it's kind of
like
fun.
the drive-through is a destination instead of like something that someone's doing en route to somewhere else. That's
exactly. Awesome. So it's been good to see all of this. There are studies out there right now that say that people believe that it's going to come back like the Roaring 20s. Others want to know what's going to stick and what's not going to stick. And I think we don't know yet. We don't know which part of this will become the norm and which part of this will go back to whatever was before.
Yep. And how do you navigate those unknowns with like your team and planning? Is it just is it more about being agile and being able to make decisions faster? Or do you have like, you know, different plans for different, you know, paths of reopening? How are you thinking about that?
I think there are different plans out there. And of course, that for people much smarter than I am that put together a lot of the details of these plans. However, I think what has behooved us the most has been to be agile, as you mentioned, and that flexibility of like, okay, that happened, let's turn. And I think, again, not just for my company, for other companies, once we saw this pandemic hit, companies that did it really well basically threw everything they knew out the window and went, let's pivot, right? Let's take the base, the groundwork of foundation of our knowledge, right? We're all smart people. What do we need to do now? And everybody, it was like all hands on deck. Everybody was working really hard because nobody knew what tomorrow brought. And there is a level of anxiety that comes with that, right? We all felt it. And I always say, like, you don't want to lose sight of a good crisis or a good, and it sounds so horrible because we're going through a pandemic and that's horrible to say, but there is opportunity in it. And the opportunity is to bring people closer together. Even though we physically couldn't be together, the conversations that were being had, the insight into someone's children walking by them or the dog walking by in the middle of them trying to push the business forward, that drives groups and teams together. And so again, it was throwing some of that stuff out the window and going, all right, how do we pivot? How do we pivot together? All hands on deck. How do we do this? And it grows stronger and more passionate teams.
Yep. Nice. And so let's talk a little bit more about the app too. So did you have an app before the pandemic, or how long has the app been around?
We currently have an app. We've had an app for about 3 years. And if anyone's listening, if you download the app, you get 2 free Del Tacos, I believe. And so it's a good deal. Downloading right now. And you'll get offers sent to your phone or through your email. And it is an offers-based app. There is no loyalty in it. It is something we're actively working on and building, but it's allowed us to roll something out and test it and start to understand our consumers a little more, because that's really our goal, is to understand like what drives them to Del Taco. And until we have that data, like as we've gone through and gathered that data, it was all hypothesis, right? Like I know why I go, you know why you go to Del Taco, and you hear stories through research and development of different intercepts of customers, but the data really helps tell the story.
Yep, and I have to imagine that with more people ordering online and using the app, that app usage is up and you're collecting more of that data than before the pandemic.
Not just app, everywhere is up, right? Digitally, it's creating that frictionless, which I hate that word, but that no-touch customer experience. And this idea that curbside's always been a thing, right? That wasn't a surprise that people could pull up and get their food, but the pandemic accelerated it. So now everybody has curbside. Food lockers are really trendy right now. You can see them at Wingstop or different restaurants. There was an article last week, I think in NRN about it. It's just accelerating this need to be able to create an experience where I do not have to interact with a person if I don't want to. We've been talking about that in the digital space for years, but nobody else in organizations was like, yeah, we should probably do that, until the pandemic hit and it sped up. I'll give you an example. When I worked in hospitality, for years and years and years on our roadmap, we said mobile check-in with your phone, being able to check into your hotel room without coming to the front desk was important. And people go, well, even like Hilton, who is a massive brand, had a small uptick on people doing that. And so in this case, it's hard to push that forward and say, this is the cost to do that. We should do it. And companies are going, I don't know, let's wait. Pandemic hit, everybody did it. You go to any hotel, I bet you can check in without going to the front desk. And I bet you can open your door with your phone, right? You don't have to touch anything, which means that you don't have to sanitize anything. Those are all really positive things on how the pandemic has accelerated technology.
Yeah. And do you think those kind of changes in consumer behavior are going to stick around for a while? Like, do you think like things like curbside pickup are up and are going to stay up? Or do you think when...
I do. And here's why I think that. But I thought this before, and so I was wrong before. I think for real now, because the pandemic accelerated it, is that it will stay, but we will take more appreciation into the true human connection of like me looking at you in the eye and saying hello, or I'd like to think we will as humans. Maybe I'm wishful thinking, but that we still want the ease of going through life. Like, I hadn't really done Walmart grocery pickup before the pandemic. Like, I'd done it like once, but I was like, I like walking around the store. And now I do it all the time. Like I say to my husband, I was like, I never have to leave the house ever again if I don't want to. Like, I just order and then he picks it up and it's put in the car. You don't have to talk to someone unless like the guy who loads your groceries is like, I need a 5-star rating, please. And you're like, okay. That's the only person you talk to. And it's exciting because I think those things will stay, because we've all found this like love of productivity. We found all these different areas of our life we can streamline. I mean, it's also how subscriptions have continued to grow. They were already growing like crazy before the pandemic. They've continued to go through the pandemic, because all these things in your life that you can put on autopilot, and you're like, all right, now I can really focus on my job, on me, on my health and wellness. So I think those things will stay.
Yep. Yeah, I think so too. I've started cooking since the pandemic started, when it was like never even interested in like trying cooking, and now I'm like getting way into it, and I think I'm gonna keep doing it even after I have to start going to an office and traveling again. So hopefully like everyone's picking up stuff that they like doing also that can stay with them, or I don't know. I just there's so much like not good stuff going on. I think that it is an opportunity to hopefully find up new things, both professionally and personally. Have you taken up any personal hobbies that are new for you since the pandemic?
I did, not cooking. I mean, I didn't pick up cooking because I didn't like to cook before. I still don't like it. However, I did take up dancing. My husband and I started like Fred Astaire dance studio dancing, and I'm not great, but I really like it. It's a lot of fun. It gives me something that challenges me. I've also taken up actually working out. Like for years, I've said I work out, but that was really a lie. And so now I actually do it, and which makes it harder to be like, I work out, and people are like, you've done it for years. And I was like, oh, that I was lying before. Now I work out because I have time. I'm not commuting. I'm not doing any of that. And then I've actually found this is going to sound horrible. I love my children, but I found a newfound love for my children because I'm actually spending time with them instead of the commuting, instead of the things. Like, I'm finding our engagements a lot more exciting and entertaining than maybe I did before, when my life was just like a complete blur. So there are little silver linings in all of this that has been nice.
Yep. Yeah, and you mentioned also, your team working really well together and being really proud of what your team's doing. That's another crazy thing. You've never met these people in person, yet it sounds like you guys are working just as effectively as if you were in the office together every day. What are some like team building techniques, or what makes a team work even without having strong in-person connection?
Well, the great news is, again, you have foresight into their personal lives because they're on the phone, and you hear a kid losing their mind in the background, and I can relate to that. So I'm like, oh, my kids lose their mind too. Let's talk about that. Like puppies barking, things like that. That helps build rapport and relationships. You have video conferences, but then I think one-on-one phone conversations sometimes are shockingly more intimate in a way than in-person conversations, right? Because you're usually on the fly walking by an office. Your phone conversations are like, hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? It's just you and me. It's like, what are you doing? And so it creates a relationship that you build together. And our team is amazing. And I know I say amazing a lot, but like they really are. We don't have any, like we give radical candor feedback. We share with each other. We're all there for the same reason. And so it makes it easy. I will tell you though that I'm excited to meet them like from the waist down soon, because that's all you see on a Zoom is like shoulders up. I spoke to a woman, not on my team, the other day, who she was like, I'm going to be out on maternity leave soon. I was like, you're pregnant? Like what? Because you never saw, like you never, like if she would have walked by, I would have known. But like in this case, you see shoulders up, right? So I am excited. And now that with people getting vaccinated, we're going to start to see more. I posted on LinkedIn, like I booked a flight to go out to California to meet the team and can't wait to do it. I don't think it'll change me. Like I'll come back and work, and there's good amount of work that'll get done here and good amount of work that'll get done there. But it's nice to be able to have that flow back and forth of in-person versus remote.
Yep. Yeah. And that's one thing, at Spaceback, our team has grown quite a bit during the pandemic, and we have a lot of people who haven't met in person. And I'm kind of struggling with figuring out the right way to, have an in-person event. And, I feel like some people are let's go. Like I miss you guys. Like, we have so much fun together. Like, let's get together in person. And, other people I feel like, are more cautious. And it, honestly, if someone's, has a baby at home and doesn't want to travel for a year because they don't feel comfortable, I don't want to force them. So I'm kind of struggling with like the right way to approach that, with the team dynamics and as a leader, and when people have different like comfort levels. And I think for now it's just, we have to make the digital stuff work, and as best we can. And we'll, hopefully when everyone's vaccinated, it will be when we can do it. But that's great that you can start to do some in-person stuff with your team now. Are they mostly in California?
Yes, all of them are. And I can't wait. Like it would have been really nice if like January in Wisconsin versus January in California feel very different. I would have loved to spend January in California, but I will take April any day right now. So it is nice. I think in the meeting and convention space, we're going to see a lot of that, of in-person conferences and meetings with a virtual component for the same reason that you mentioned, which is some people won't feel comfortable coming in person, and that's okay. So let's give a best of both worlds, especially because we've seen that virtual conferences can do okay, virtual events can do okay. And so again, it sped up that space too. Like Brand Innovators, for example, has done a stellar job of bringing their events virtual. And not all companies can say that, but they've learned over the first couple months, and they probably will tell you the same thing, that now they have an unlock, and like events like this can happen and learnings like this can happen. And there'll probably still be that component when we go back in person.
Yep. Yeah. And it's made it, I think, a lot easier to engage too, or like going to an event, without having to travel and lose, as much time as you would now. Like you can get the learnings from, your own couch or living room or home office, wherever you happen to be, and then get right back into your workday or start your evening. So
and we found out things very quickly, right? Like long form content is harder virtually than short form content, right? You can keep someone's attention span, and we all know that, virtually a lot shorter than if I lock them in a room with me in person, right? So there have been learnings. It's not exactly the same, but I think we'll have the best of both worlds soon.
Yep. Nice. So want to learn a little bit more about like paid marketing also, and how you think about the different channels that you're in there. Like, has the pandemic changed much around like advertising on social, or using a DSP, the I guess old school way that we think of the demand side platform kind? What's your approach to the paid marketing mix right now?
I think that the gentleman who was speaking before me said it best, which he was like, Well, everybody's cut the cord now. To be fair, they were cutting the cord before. It just, again, accelerated it because it's a cheaper option for a lot of folks. But looking at where our customer is, where we can find them, and we continue, just like every other company in the world, shifting spend to digital, right? Like you have to, you don't have a choice. And I think connected TV, which soon won't be called connected TV, it'll just be called TV, right? Because everybody will have it. I know that's crazy. It's funny how traditional media used to be called just media. And then we had to call it traditional media because this new crazy internet marketing thing came on. And now when you talk about marketing, people just assume it means all marketing. They're not really, it's not traditional versus digital or any of those. And now connected TV is like the fancy new word we all use all the time, but it's where our customers are and really going after where they are. Like everyone, being able to track that and study what their patterns are and how we can incentivize another. In restaurants, we're always looking for how do we increase that average ticket or how do we get another transaction, right? So Panera, they rolled out coffee subscription. And I was talking to someone who goes, I don't understand why they did that. Like, why would they just give away coffee? I was like, because it drives people into their restaurants and they're hoping that at least one of those times you buy a croissant or a bagel with it. And coffee, I don't know if we all know this, is pennies. It's like giving away popcorn at the movie theater. It costs you nothing. So yeah, we do invest a lot in digital and we'll continue to.
Nice. And yeah, I'm not a coffee drinker myself, but when I saw ads everywhere when they rolled out that coffee subscription, and
I think they did it like 2 months before the pandemic too. Like, oh, what sucks for them, but like they're now bringing it back. Like I'm getting an ad almost every day for it.
Nice. So the old school DSPs, you're using them. You connected TV, and it sounds like you're in a lot of different channels.
Mm-hmm.
That brings me to like the new DSPs. Like I imagine a lot of the ordering, is happening, is delivery and stuff now. So how are you like driving traffic to the Uber Eats and DoorDashes of the world, or how do partnerships work with, those kind of companies? Do you attribute like, sales to different platforms that you're using?
So we do attempt to attribute sales to I don't think we're any better or worse off than most folks out there as it relates to attribution. We always talk about like golden attribution. It doesn't exist. It doesn't feel like. We do drive to, we would love for people to come to us direct to order. If they want delivery, you can click delivery in our app. It will go to a third party, just as most folks do. But it's hard to say like how many people are going to DoorDash that are Del Taco customers who just have decided they want delivery through DoorDash, or how many people are going to DoorDash and being like, I don't know what to have. Okay, I'll get Del Taco, right? The same goes for like, we've also found that people who, they search for a good deal. So they'll have Postmates and Uber and DoorDash and all these guys on their phone, and they're checking for like who has free delivery or who has this. And they're not necessarily dedicated only to one. But then we see DoorDash roll out Dash Pass and Uber Eats roll out a pass. And so everybody has a subscription model now. So like the question really is, does that make them more loyal to just one platform, or are they still ordering off another? But you don't know, because none of them are sharing their data with each other. The only thing you can do is listen to the earnings call and hope that you pick up on some special note. But I don't know. The answer is I don't know. I don't know if our customers are always incremental. I think there is some incrementality on those third-party deliveries. Do I think it's fully incremental? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine that has a lot to do with kind of understanding your customer attribution model. And some customers, I assume, are loyal to Del Taco, where they're looking for the best deal, on any DSP, but they're going to order Del Taco either way. Versus those are, that would be discovering you through these kind of apps. And it sounds like Verdict is still kind of out as to how much of that discovery happens versus people who are already Del Taco customers.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. I'm starting to get a few questions from the audience here. So I'm going to I'll read one here. One is like, what do you see as the biggest future challenge with digital ordering and retail, and what is the biggest opportunity?
For digital ordering, what's the biggest challenge? Oh, okay. All right, so let's talk about the future challenge. Is that what the question? The future challenge for retail?
Yep, biggest challenge and opportunity when it comes to like digital ordering.
I would say opportunity for digital ordering. Well, I would say pre-pandemic, it was that people were going into your stores. They were going into your restaurants. They were going into your Walmart of the world. And you had all this opportunity to advertise to them when they were inside, right? For their next visit and tell them a whole story because you had them. They were inside of your four walls. But now they're not coming into your four walls necessarily. So how do you tell them the same story and give them the same experience without them ever setting foot inside of your four walls? I think that QSR has a little bit of a leg up because we've always had a drive-through. So we've always had this idea of like, they may never set foot inside of our location. How do we continue to tell them the story? I think retail, like brick and mortar only buildings, have an even bigger challenge because they have relied on people coming into their four walls all the time. And so now they're going, how do I tell the story? And those are the ones we're seeing really heavily shift to digital. And they all of a sudden made a bunch of changes this year. The future, I think, is going to then, what's that opportunity and what will change? I think the future of that is a lot more will happen above the store, a lot more. And when I say above the store, outside of those four walls, a lot more of the storytelling, a lot more of the, on the phone, all of those things, so that when you walk in, if you do walk in, you already know what you're getting, right? There's no question of like, hey, where are we? And what is this place? And it's no more of like just a show up and being like, let's try that. Like you've done all your research beforehand. I think that's really where the future is it will happen above store versus in store.
Yeah, and that's a big mind shift too from like the old school, way of thinking about restaurants is like the experience is, there and dining and ordering and all of that versus the experience becoming from like, how you are first introduced to Del Taco to how you think about the menu, like all of that stuff isn't really happening in the drive-through line anymore or in the store. How about so another question from the audience? I actually really like this question. Is what are the skills that you would like your team to develop this year? So it sounds like your team's already working great, but are there like new things that are skill sets that you think your team needs to develop more of because of the changing needs?
Well, I hope that's not one for one of my team members asking that. No, they wouldn't ask that because I'm not quiet about what I think development. It depends on them. I don't think so. I'll answer this the way the person is looking probably for, but then also personally, I don't think that there's a one-stop shop for everyone. I think it's all about situational leadership. So one of the things we do on my team is we all do the Gallup Strength Finder. We look at what our top 5 core strengths are. We really lean into those strengths so that we have a diverse team of people who are really good at different things. And then if there's certain things that will help them continue to grow and learn, then we add those on it, but it's different for every single person on the team. It's never this, like rarely the same, because what I need to work on and what you need to work on are probably 2 different things. All right, now throw that answer out the window because the person asking the question is probably like, that doesn't answer my question. So to answer the question of like digital first, like what are those things you need to look at? It's a future forward thinking approach to things. So are you resourceful? And I'll tell you this, they did a study. I don't remember who did this study, but it was looking at people who had applied for jobs. And then they followed these people who got hired through their career. And what they looked at is, what did they apply on? What browser did they apply for the job on? And they looked at people who applied through Google Chrome or like Firefox, and people who applied through Internet Explorer or whatever comes loaded on your computer. And then they looked at who stayed in their job and who was successful and continued to move up. And people who had applied through Chrome and Firefox were much more successful and continued to move up in their roles, while people who had applied through Internet Explorer had left. And I will tell you, when I first read it, someone goes, well, so I'm just going to apply for jobs using Chrome? And I was like, no, that's not the answer. The answer is what they find is, so Internet Explorer, it comes loaded on your computer, right? Like it's like just what's there. And Chrome, Firefox, there's a resourcefulness in having to go out and find those browsers and be like, I think there's something better out here. I'm not making any judgments. If you need to use an Internet Explorer, it's fine. But there's a resourcefulness about thinking, is this the best? And have I asked all the right questions to find what I should use? And then you had to go download something and then use that browser. And it's about resourcefulness. So I would hope that my team continues to learn and cultivate the skill of resourcefulness. So that means if I hand them a project, don't just come back to me with like, here it's done, but like, here it's done. Also, I have these questions and I have these thoughts, and I'm guessing you wanted me to do this project for this reason, and here's how we can move forward with it. Like, take it to the next level. All right, now one step deeper, and then I promise I'll shut up, which is digital wise basics. Make sure you have your Google Analytics certification. Do not come and talk to me about numbers and like you don't understand how Google Analytics work. There are so many free services out there. There's Google Analytics, HubSpot. All of these guys have free trainings online. So you don't have to be like, well, I don't have $3,000 to do this certification. They're free. Go take them. Make sure you have your certifications in those things. Facebook ad certification, like all of those things are free. At least you know what's being said when people talk about it out there in the world.
Yep, makes sense. And I think that's totally something I appreciate too, is like autonomy, where like, you know, when you ask someone to, you know, to look into something and they are looking into the reasons why and come back to you with probably some of the questions that like, if you spent more time, like could have been part of the assignment and like already answering those, like, yeah, it sounds like you have a really great team. And yeah, I think that's something that like total takeaway for all teams right now is like just being able to, I think, be adaptive, and you know, it's less about domain expertise and more about being able to like, you know, learn new things quickly and jump in and have an impact. I do have a few more questions from the audience. I don't think we're gonna get to all of them, but here's another one that's kind of about marketing strategy. And you know, obviously Del Taco has a ton of national locations, and some of those locations, like, you know, are different places that may be opening faster than others. And does the marketing strategy vary by location? Is it more about, you know, the national brand, you know, identity, or is there different messaging and different strategy based on region or specific store location?
In most restaurant concepts, there's a national component, there's a DMA component, and there's a local component, meaning like right around your location. And we're no different. So the difference is like, we're a regional brand, right? We're not in all 50 states. We're in a lot of states, but not all 50. And being able to have that DMA buying ability, but then localize, again, with digital, it makes it very easy. It used to be, you didn't have a choice, right? You had to take out an ad or a national broadcast commercial, and then markets that don't have any of your locations would see your ad and you'd be like, well, that was a waste of money unless we're eventually going to come there, right? In this case, digital makes it real easy to really target in on the local level, which creates cost savings. It creates the ability to have dynamic content that speaks right to that local level. And so, yes, we do vary the advertising by location.
Nice. And are there like different products and different messages by location, or is it more about like making sure you're in areas where there's a store?
Yeah, not necessarily different products always. Like we might test something in one location, but it could be different type of messaging. It could be what resonates. Like one product might resonate differently than another product. But it's a constant test and evolve. And I think that goes for anyone who grew up in the digital space understands that you're just always testing, right? You never set it and forget it. There's never like a time you turn on the light switch and you go, oh, that light looks good, I'm done. Nope, we're always optimizing it.
Yep, right on. Well, I assume Emily's here because our time to wrap up is near, but I will just drop again one thing Aaron shared, 2 free tacos if anyone gets the app. I know I'm gonna get it. And the loyalty program, when can we expect that?
Later this fall, yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Erin. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you both so much. You guys have such exciting things on the horizon. So I know we're all excited and anxiously awaiting those. So thank you so much for being here. You're always a great addition to our programs and such a great way to close out today's session on marketing innovation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Guys. Well, thanks so much to Erin and Casey for closing out today's summit. And thank you to everyone who tuned in and continues to support brand innovators. We wouldn't be where we are today without our incredible community of brand marketers. We hope you'll all tune in for our next live cast taking place this Thursday. We have 2 amazing programs set. At 9 a.m. Eastern, we'll be going live with our next international live cast, hearing from marketing executives based all around the world from brands like Expedia, Amazon, and many more. And later in the day at noon Eastern, we'll be producing an influencer marketing summit with our partners at Influential. We hope to